Never heard that beat before. All right, it is that time. Once again, locks before lock, getting you ready for what's going to be an absurd 12-game NBA slate. We are here to give you just an appetizer in the betting markets, talk about our favorite bets, talk about why you should be going over to Odd Chopper for not just betting, but for DFS. To do that, I am Ben Rasa. I am joined, as I always am, by Matt Savoca. Matt, 12 games, 27 minutes. I think we can do it, though.
Absolutely no time for small talk. Can't even say hello. We're wasting time right now, Ben.
I'm sorry.
I'm thrilled to be here. This is really fun. I love these mega slates, but as always, it's tough to do when we have so little time. Excited to dig in with you.
Yep, no doubt about it. Time not wasted. Quickly talking about why Odd Chopper is going to be powering this show. If you go over there, completely free. You can sort, you can filter, you can find the best bets from Alex and the entire team's projections by game. Find the best lines, shop those lines, and make the bets. It's just a no-brainer that you want to check that out. And it helps when you're trying to build lineups as well. But here we go. We're starting things off with the Boston Celtics 7.5-point favorite on the road in Charlotte, 225.5-point total. Where are you going to lead us off here?
All right, I'm starting a theme here, but I'm not going to tell you what it is at the moment. You'll understand the trend for today. But Robert Williams under 11.5 rebounds is my first bet of the day. We've got the Boston big fella projected for a solid stat line. Don't get me wrong, 33 minutes of play is a median projection for him, but this line is just too high according to the Awesemo projections. Charlotte over their last 10 games, actually 8th in defensive rating. I get why the line's lofty, but I'm not going to sit here and say like Charlotte is specifically good on the glass. They're 29th in rebounding percentage, but still, again, this line is just fundamentally wrong to me. Williams averages under 11 boards. He's hit the prop line just 40% of his games the last month. He's topped 11 just twice during that span. It just happened to be 2 of his last 3 starts. So I'm not leaning into the recency bias. It's just, again, fundamentally too high here, despite a decent opportunity for Williams against Charlotte to put up big numbers in the rebounding category. Saying this is probably a 2 out of 5 star bet under 11.5 rebounds.
Yeah, it's not again, we have 12 games, so we can be very selective if we need to. You can always be selective, but Terry Rozier under points, under 21.5, minus 105. We have him projected around 18, 19 points. I think that's another place you can go. I don't have a side or total in this game. You know, I'd love to dig in more, but again, we got 11 more of these bad boys. The next one up, Bulls, minus 5.5 in Detroit, 227.5 total. Where are you going here?
In recent shows with you, Ben, we've been talking up these defensive bets for weeks, really. This is one of the areas where the Awesemo NBA projections really shine, and our ability to project role players and their impact, at least for now, seems to be really strong compared to the books. We often see strong discrepancies for players who have just 1 or 2 raw numbers in a statistical category. So in that regard, I'm going to say Marvin Bagley over 0.5 steals. Our median projection indicates that this is a fair line, but kind of incorrect. When we run the sims on this one, Bagley gets a steal in over 60% of those simulations. Now compare that to the fact that some books have this at plus 180. That's an implied probability around 36%. So basically Vegas says this happens 1/3 of the time. We say it happens 2/3 of the time. That may not sound like a big difference, but that's actually a massive, massive difference in terms of probability percentages here. Bagley's only played in 6 total games over the last month, but we've seen him make more of an impact defensively as a member of the Pistons. 2 steals in 2 of the last 3 games for him. I think he nabs at least 1 or more tonight against a still depleted Chicago front court. 3 out of 5 star bet on this one.
Yeah, I think you can look over with Bagley in a lot of different areas. Over a half a 3-pointer, over 7.5 board shows up as an opportunity. So this could just be a situation where you can structure a lot of different types with him. You could throw him into same game parlays with some of these other guys. This is a game that screams more role players than top end guys. Guys are going to be using for DFS. I don't see anything that I want to mess around with. You know, with the big time stars, DeRozan's lines seem basically no value for me. Zach LaVine, same type of thing. No spread for me. I'm not betting this game. Anything else before we move on?
I think we can move on here.
Suns. This is a good game. Suns plus 4.5 in Miami, 219 total. We know we have some Q tags. You guys are going to learn along with all of us in the next couple hours who's in and who's out. But talk to me about Phoenix and Miami, given what we know right now.
mean, it sounds kind of like Devin Booker is closer to good to go. I mean, that's what it sounds like at this point. We're feeling pretty strongly that despite playing, it looks like a very exciting matchup. As a fan, I'm obviously super excited for this one, but the Awesemo projections have firmly planted a flag on Booker's prop lines being too high. I think the one that looks the most appealing is the assists prop, under 5.5 assists for Booker, especially considering the defensive prowess of their opponent. I get it. Butler's questionable here. Miami's still third in defensive rating and fifth in net rating over their last 10 games. And most importantly, we think Booker coming back here, he's not going to have close to the minutes projection that we usually see him play. We have him about 7 minutes under his last 10 games average in terms of minutes plays. You can get at minus 150 on this under prop. Some books, that's an implied probability of about 60%. Our expected probability, our win probability, is near 80%, a really solid expected ROI. Does Booker have a ceiling game in him? Absolutely. If he plays, that's fine. But factoring in the volatility here, that makes me lean the under. This is a 4-star bet for me.
Yeah, I think this is one again, we all know this minutes equal production here. And if that minutes projection is accurate, there's some major value on shorting Booker tonight. I'm going to go, and we don't know with Jimmy Butler. I hope he plays because I kind of lean to the Heat in this game. I think that even as pretty sizable favorites at home, that they can handle them. You mentioned Booker may not be playing at the 100% level. They're at home, very strong, methodical total here. If Butler plays, that's great. Even if he sits, it's not like I'm drawing dead here, but this is my first side of the show. I'm going to lay the points with the Heat. You can find 4 out there if you shop it. I'll give that a couple stars for the first one of the show here. Now we start to get into a couple big spreads coming up. Next, we've got the Lakers, LeBron, we'll see. 5.5 point favorites in Houston, 233.5 total, so much higher pace. What do you do here with, again, more unknowns on the schedule?
I think this is really my first true pass that
Okay.
I've had on any of these shows. I usually have one thing to throw out. Not that this game has any sort of postseason implication. In fact, it really has none. LeBron is questionable here. If James can't go, you can expect bumps in usage from the typical suspects: Westbrook, Monk, Carmelo, maybe. I mean, all I can say here is I hope LeBron is good to go. I mean, as a fan, I'm still not tired of nights like he had the other night, 56 and 10. It's more impressive at age 37. I was looking at some of the plus minus stats on Basketball Reference. The top plus minus stats for players 34 and over in a season all belong to LeBron James currently. I digress. We'll keep you tuned here for the deeper dive live before lock. We'll get more info on this game then.
It's tough in the prop world right now with LeBron because his unknown, it shields all the props. If he sits, everything changes about these props. A lot of books aren't even posting props because they're not going to expose themselves to having people beat those lines because it's such a massive piece. So for that reason, even the spread, it's hard to bet this game when you just don't know. And there's 12 of them. There's no reason to force it. It'll have much more relevance on the DFS side, particularly when we get that status update. Hawks, Bucks, Hawks 4.5 point underdogs in Milwaukee, 239.5 total. Competitive game, could be up tempo type game. Where do you see yourself going in the betting market here?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's exactly that, competitive and up tempo. And that's what the implied totals have. And I think some role players here have some middling prop lines, and you could go over on them. Kevin Huerter over 2.5 assists is one that I'm zeroing in on. Huerter's averaging right at that line, 2.4 assists per game over his last month in just 30 minutes of playing time. Tonight in this really, really high total game, we're actually liking a lot of the overs here. So it's pretty simple. Hawks have one of the best offensive ratings in the league over their last 10. The Bucks have been playing particularly fast during that same span. They're actually the 4th in the NBA in pace. That's what I was seeing earlier today. So Giannis, Trey, both teams at relatively full strength. That's how you get a high total like this. Huerter should be a beneficiary by proxy then. Plus, Atlanta's actually been an average to above average team in assist percentage as it is. We've got him hitting in the over here in 54% of our latest simulations. And that's another 30% expected ROI bet on Odds Shopper. I think it's another solid 3 out of 5 star bet.
So this is one, I think, if you're talking about looking for same game parlays, and we have a ton of this type of content over on the Odds Shopper YouTube. If you're looking for same game parlays, how to build them, strategies, and the picks, you can always head over there at any time throughout the day. But when you have a game with a total like this, you can start pairing up a lot of overs because there's enough production to go around. So if you want to pair up Trae Young and Giannis and Herter and over on some of the 3-pointers, over on the assists, and start building it out. I think this is the best game that we've talked about so far, how to do that. I lean over 239.5. I think this is going to be a very high scoring game, could be very competitive. So all systems go here. I lean overs. I'm going to go with Odd Chopper and with you on that front. The next game is a gigantic spread. Every time we do the show, the Thunder are on the spread, and they're always gigantic dogs. They're 15-point underdogs in Minnesota tonight. I don't even know who the Timberwolves have, but talk to me about this game.
Yeah, we don't even know at this point. We're a couple hours from a lock here, and yeah, we got two major players on Minnesota who are game time decisions in D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards here, and still OKC is completely battered. There's just so many injuries to talk about. I'm still taking unders for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, despite him being really the only relevant player here. I still like him in fantasy. I'll get to that in a minute. Our projections do currently have Russell and Edwards in, so maybe this changes a little bit projections wise, but over the last 10 games, the Timberwolves are 5th in the NBA in defensive rating and 2nd in the NBA in net rating. By the way, they're 8-2 over their last 10, tied for the 2nd best record in the NBA. I've said this multiple times on this show. This does not mean I'm totally down on Shai. I love him in DFS, even at 10.2K on DK. He's a top 15 player in terms of optimal lineup percentage, but I think he'll contribute in other ways. It's only happened 29% of the time since he returned from injury, but SGA stays under 5 boards in a ton of our simulations. So the fact that you're getting that at plus odds, you can get it at plus 110. It's pretty solid expected ROI, despite this not being the base rate here for Shai. Maybe 2.5 out of 5 stars on this one.
You can also look out there. You can go under 6.5 boards for Shai at, you're going to lay more juice. But if you're looking a little more conservative, you want a higher win percentage and you're incurring more juice, you can absolutely do that as well. And Minnesota, I mean, you mentioned that they've been playing really well, very strong at home, 21-12, winners of 5 straight. They should roll over this team. There's certainly blowout equity here. If you think that he's sitting on the bench, it's another reason to short him. There are no props up for the Timberwolves for obvious reasons. There's nothing we can really do there. And I assume you're not looking to lay or take 15 points.
I won't touch that. I mean, maybe like if you wanted to just do a quarter unit, you can say Minnesota. But again, this changes wildly depending on who's starting to me.
It's very tough without the personnel. And even so, I don't think that's a lot of points to lay. Magic, a little more reasonable, but they're still sizable dogs, 8.5-point underdogs in New Orleans, 222.5 point total. We know that the Magic, they struggle everywhere, road, home, neutral. It doesn't really matter. But from the prop side, they have some, pretty interesting pieces, rebounding guards and whatnot. Cole Anthony, it's been a favorite prop bet of mine throughout the year. What are you looking at here in this individual matchup?
Looking at Jonas Valanciunas under 11.5 rebounds. There's a couple of these lofty rebounding lines that I'll just take the sweat all game long and just J-Val's in a good spot, but I'm still thinking that this line is too high. Again, I get where the line is where it is. No BI for New Orleans. Orlando 29th in defensive rebound percentage over their last 10. But during that same span, I saw that they're quietly 4th in the NBA in overall rebounding percentages. And just look at the game logs here for J-Val. He's got 3 games with 14 or more rebounds in his last 6. But this line, again, just too lofty. If it were 10.5, it's probably closer. But this 11.5 line is just kind of enticingly high. It's sitting at minus 115 on the books right now. That implies a probability of about 53%. We've got an expected win probability here at 70%, another 30 plus expected ROI bet. Decent spot here for J-Val, but I think it's 4 out of 5 on the under for 11.5.
Yeah, I mean, certainly make your case, and there is showing value there. The price is right for it. I'm going to go a different direction for you. I'm going to go over 2.5 3-pointers for CJ McCollum. I like the spot. You have to lay a little juice to see minus 135 out there, but this is something I can get on board with. You look at Orlando, they allow 36.4% opponent's 3-point percentage. Obviously, that's almost last in the league, 27th. McCollum's volume should be there. They're sizable favorites. You mentioned no Ingram. I think that, again, all systems go here. There's a little juice, but it's a good enough price for me to put that on the card tonight. Another game, though, for a side, I'm not looking. It would be the New Orleans side. I'd rather lay the points than take the points with Orlando, but maybe a live spot. I don't see much here on a side or a total.
I'm kind of with you here as well.
All right, we're doing good. We're all right here. I will say very quickly, it's awesome to see people roll in and spend this half hour with us before we get to the, ship my money. Awesemo himself. The big dogs come up next, no doubt about it. If you want to support the betting channel, you want to support us here, hit that like button. It's the easiest way to do it. And if you are not subscribed, we'd love to have you as part of the team. Just hit subscribe right there. You'll be part of the 75,000 subscriber community that we are building to fast and furious. All right, 5 games left. Our Knicks are on the schedule here, mercifully. 9-point dogs in Dallas, 216 total. I believe that is the lowest of the 12 games. Julius Randle, what do we got here? Yeah.
Julius Randle under 23.5 points. I think that's solidly the best bet on the books right now. Game environments matter in the NBA. They might not matter quite as much as, say, the NFL, because things can move quickly off of the expected game environment here. But this is not expected to be a high-scoring affair. As you said, the Awesemo Sports betting model agrees with the Vegas line, has it pegged as the lowest expected total game on this massive slate, and currently has the Knicks expected total as a team at just 105 points. As you would expect, that's the lowest of any of the teams playing tonight. The Knicks have won 2 in a row against the Clippers and the Sacramento Kings. I think the luck runs out tonight. I think they run into a buzzsaw against Dallas. And Dallas as a team has been above average defensively and in net rating. They're top 10 in both stats. The Knicks bottom 10 in both of those stats. We've got Randle projected for plenty of playing time, as you would expect, and that's still not enough to get to 24 points. The under on this prop line hits 70% of the time in our simulations. So even at minus 115 odds, that kind of implies a coin flip. This is a very, very high expected ROI bet, a 4-star out of 5 for me.
I think this is the single best prop bet of the 12 games. You are on it. I like it. And in our premium betting package that we have, if you join the community, sign up, you hop in our Discord, myself, many others giving out picks, Alex Baker himself has the Julius Randle under points on his list today, just to give you guys some insight there. So a lot of people, a lot of smart people identifying this. And OddsShopper also says this is just a little too inflated at minus 115. I think that is one of the starting points of my prop card tonight. Other than that, though, I can get on board with going over on Jalen Brunson's 3-pointers over 1.5. It's just because of the line. Plus 170 is a really good number there. We have him as a coin flip to do that. If you're getting almost 2-1, that is some value there. I don't think you need to play that. I don't think it's at the top of my card. But if you want an additional thing, you're looking to get over on a Maverick, I think that's where I'd be drawn.
I dig that.
Yeah, it's just a good number. Plus 170 is higher than I thought that would be. And the more I dug into the numbers, that seems fine to me. All right, 4 games left. Raptors 2-point favorite in San Antonio, 228.5 point total. Competitive game. I don't think it's the best game for props, but that doesn't mean we can't find value. Where are you going in this one?
I'm looking at Scotty Barnes over 2.5 assists. We've got Barnes projected for just a ton of playing time tonight. So that's where it starts. Over 36 projected minutes for Barnes. That would be 3 more minutes than he's averaged over his last 10 games. He's one of only 5 forwards on this slate that has that many minutes projected for him. Over the last month, Barnes is really kind of doing everything. 15.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, but most importantly for this prop, he's averaging just a hair shy of 3 assists per game. He's at the over on this prop line in 55% of his contests over the last month. So against the Spurs, 11th, who are 11th worst in the NBA over their last 10 games in defensive rating, why not just use the recent averages, the base rates as our guides? Looking at the median projections for Barnes, we have him right at 3.5. So on this 2.5 line here, even at minus 135 on some books, it's still really solid plus EV bet. 3 out of 5 stars here on Barnes.
So everything you said, and I'm totally on board with that. I think another option, and I wouldn't put these together because you're really cannibalizing, is over 4.5 assists for Siakam. You're getting that at a better line in terms of, I think it's a less likely to hit, but you're plus 100. So you're not laying any juice there if you want to be more aggressive. I don't mind that. I think the overs on some of the distributors for the Raptors is a way to go. Other ones that stood out that I looked into, Keldon Johnson under 2.5 3-pointers is projected as one of the better values. I'm kind of indifferent to it. Minus 145 was a little too much juice for me. I would lean under if I had to bet it, but it is not on my card currently, even though I think it's probably the right side. So over on those assist guys. Not going to bet this game, though. I think it's probably Spurs or pass, but it would be like a 1-star flyer for me. Anything on a side?
I think Toronto's going to win.
Okay. Well, one of us is going to be right. We've cornered the market. That's what we do here. Nuggets, 6-point favorite in Sacramento, 237 total. Jokic is going insane. Of course, he's going to be a hot topic on the deeper dive and live before lock. Are you going to his props? Are you going to any other Nuggets props? What do you see in this game?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the latter. Some other Nuggets props. Can I interest you in some Monty Morris unders? Because boy, we are not feeling Morris tonight against the Kings, or at least not feeling his prop lines, I should say. Of the top value bets on the Odd Shopper app, specifically for this contest, 4 of the top 6 value bets are unders in various categories for Morris. So if we're picking just one, let's just go with that rebounding line. It sits at just 3.5, and we're still really confident he doesn't get there. I see the past week of games. Yeah, he's had 5+ boards twice. That's fine. But looking at our latest simulation specifically for tonight, it looks like in 3/4 of those sims, he fails to make it to 4 rebounds. That's a massive amount of confidence in the under. Part of it is that we have him projected for about 2 minutes less than he's been playing in average minutes over his last 10 games. And part of it is that Morris sometimes just simply disappears in this particular category. He's had 3 boards or less in 4 of his last 6 games. This is a 3-star bet for me. As a median projection, we have him barely cresting 2, so under 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, he does stand out. The other guy, though, that is up there, and that's why I wanted to kind of ask you, do you want to live as dangerous as shorting Jokic's 14.5 rebounds? We have him projected near 13. He had an overtime game recently. It's 3rd game in 4 days. The line checks out. I think I'm going to do it, but obviously when you are shorting star players, you always know you talked about this with Booker. It's a dangerous game, but we're looking for little wins over time that add up. It's not, you have to hit every bet. That doesn't happen. That's not how it works. I think I do lean under on 14.5 boards tonight there. It's risky, but at -120, again, it's part of a larger card, and I think I can get away with that.
Yeah, that's what the math says.
That's what the math says.
I don't have the guts for it. I don't have the guts for it. Maybe it's a little bit of my bias, I want him to do well in DFS as well.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that he does better than expectations. And it is really hard sometimes when you're hoping for a ceiling game, when you're investing that much salary in the DFS side to hope for the under here. But you are correct. If you're just looking at expected win percentage, and it would go with my theme, but I'm not betting that one tonight for the under on Jokic.
No, I respect that. And again, that's where the process of DFS, if you're a casual bettor or just getting into betting or not betting at all, I still think it's very useful to head over to Odd Shopper and just check out these lines and say, okay, it doesn't mean you can't play this guy in DFS, but here's maybe where the percentage of his fantasy points may come from. Is it one stat? Is he going to fill up all the peripherals? Is he just pure point scorer? Obviously, we know with Jokic, comes from everywhere. The guy is absolutely unbelievable. 2 games left, but one of them, I don't even know if we classify this as a game. Portland is an 18-point underdog to my Jazz, 221.5 total. The last time I was on the show, I believe I mentioned I was going to take the points with Portland, and I did, and it was not good. They lost by like 40 points, and that's what you get sometimes when you take these massive underdogs. I don't have the guts to do it here. They're just not a functioning team right now. Everybody's hurt. Simons is out. Josh Hart against the world. Anything in the prop world.
So, yeah, I'm not taking the spread in this one. I'm not doing. I think Utah wipes the floor with them. Absolutely. But this does fit with my theme for today. Again, a lofty double-digit rebounding total that I think we can slam the under on. Under 13.5 rebounds for Rudy Gobert is my bet here. Utah, as you said, has a staggeringly high win probability here. It's up around 92% on the Awesemo sports betting model. When I see spreads like this, win probabilities like this, it honestly increases the uncertainty for certain elements of the game. Playing time for the starters, for one, especially for the star players, can fluctuate more than on a typical night because it simply might not be needed. Think about it from a simulations aspect. If a team wins in 92% of the time, there are many cases where they're blowing out the team. That means bench players are playing, or they're drastically underperforming their expectations and they still win because they have a 92% chance of winning as a base rate. So in both of these scenarios, the unders, especially on loftier totals, have increased probabilities to me. Gobert's a great rebounder. It's a great spot. It's an implied probability of 52% at -112. We have the under hitting at over 63%, an expected win probability of 63%. This is a 3 out of 5 star bet for me.
Yeah, I think, again, this is a game. It's very hard to attack a spread when you're talking about one this big. And I think that there are opportunities. Chad, friend of the show, Dan, just said, liking Gobert over 1.5 blocks. Portland allows second most blocks to opposing centers. And Steve Buzzard, look at that. The Colts hopping in, one of the many sharp people who are dropping bets in our Discord. That's why you want to get in there. A lot of opportunities to make some money by tailing these guys. I know I certainly check out what they were playing every night last game. Look at this. We are right on time, by the way. That is how we do it. Coming up next again, Adam, Alex, breaking all these games down from a DFS standpoint, answering all your questions in chat, so don't go anywhere. But we do have the Clippers. We do have the Wizards. I'll get mine out of the way. I'm going over on Terrence Mann's points. It feels uncomfortable, but I think you can push for 30 minutes. He hasn't been overly efficient from the floor, but if he's taking around 10 shots in a game like this, should stay competitive. Methodical total, but I'm not worried about that. That's probably my favorite prop, but I don't think this is the best prop game in general.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement as well. This isn't my favorite. We'll say 2. If we're doing decimal stars, 2.5 out of 5 stars. Greg was killing me on another show for putting half stars, but
half stars.
I digress.
I'll allow it.
Reggie Jackson over 1.5 3-pointers made is the one I'm looking at. Last 2 games for Jackson, 0 and 1 made threes. That doesn't look great, obviously, but over his last month of games, he's averaging 1.6 threes per game, has hit the over on this 1.5 prop line 55% of the time. And, Washington's been okay against guards this season. They've actually been 10th in defensive rating over their last 10 games, but they're middle of the road in 3-point percentage allowed by opponents. And we've got Jackson slated for about a minute more in playing time than he's averaged over his last 10 games. So it's happened 55% of the times in recent games. We've got him projected for over 2.5 made threes. Then this is looking like a really solid plus EV bet for me. A 70% expected win rate, even at -180 odds. That's still a solid plus EV bet. Again, 2.5 out of 5 stars.
There we have it. 12 up, 12 down. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with us, getting a feel for the slate. And now we're going to turn it over to Ship My Money and Awesemo himself. Thanks to Tyler behind the glass, doing a great job as always. For me, for Matt, for everyone at Odd Shopper, go check that out. Good luck. Enjoy the game. Take something down tonight, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. Got a colossal 12-game slate tonight. So this one, we got to really dig into every single game to make sure we're not missing anything. Fortunately, got the perfect guy to help us do it. Adam, shit my money. Scherer. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. A lot of stuff to talk about today, but there's a lot of good plays, so at least it's like a fun slate to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like a ton of questionable players as well. So this is going to be one where the late news or maybe just news going up to lock is going to be crucial to follow. So we'll get into each individual game. But guys, before we get going here, breaking down 12 games requires a lot of positive vibes. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And then also, if you hit that bell, you can find when we go live as a notification. We have a lot of premium tools for free on Awesemo.com today. The ownership projections for NBA, NHL top stacks, and the PGA golfer rankings. Got the Players Championship this weekend. So make sure you got the live before lock for that tonight after NBA. Adam, you trying to win a million maker or are you out this week?
Yeah, no, I'm planning on winning $1 million on Friday and then winning another $1 million on Sunday.
Nice, man. Well, don't forget where you came from. But yeah, that's the thing about DFS, man. Like, could change your life in a couple days. So I'll be gunning for that $1 million too. I guess you could win 2 millionaire makers in PGA this week, so make it 3 million, huh?
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't win it, hopefully someone in the community takes these down. Yeah, you're talking about the DraftKings final, I assume. So if you're there, make sure to say hi to Shit My Money. We'll be at the FanDuel one. So make sure to say hi if you're there. All right. Well, let's get into tonight's games. Let's start off with Boston at Charlotte. Boston is a favorite in this one. As far as injuries, nothing too interesting. Aaron Nesmith is out, but it seems like they've kind of condensed their rotation recently with Robert Williams, Horford getting some more minutes than they might usually, as well as Marcus Smart. So have you noticed anything recent with the Celtics?
I mean, just getting a lot of minutes from their starters, I think that's to be expected. Obviously, Tatum and Brown play a lot. Robert Williams' minutes have been up over the last, I guess, like month or two at this point. So it's kind of a situation where I think all of the starters, but particularly Tatum, Brown, and Williams look good. I mean, it's a good matchup against Charlotte. But the thing is, with it being a 12-game slate, even though right now we don't have a lot of value, there's probably going to be some that opens up. But there's also just so many good plays that if guys don't clearly stand out as being underpriced, it's tough to really call them priorities. So that's how I feel about Boston in particular, but Tatum, Brown, Williams, I think all look good. It's just there's a lot of guys that look similar.
Definitely, yeah. No one's really standing out as a must-play on Boston. I agree. So let's move over to the Charlotte side. Gordon Hayward is out for this one. Jim McDaniel is questionable, but he did play last game. PJ Washington's been playing a ton recently, which has been a little bit of a surprise. And then besides that, just the usuals, Bridges, LaMelo, Rozier. Is anything jumping out at you from the Hornets?
Not really. It's a difficult matchup against Boston. Only 109 implied total is relatively low for this slate. You can certainly make a case for Ball, Rozier, Bridges at their respective salaries. You know, Washington should play around 30 to 32 minutes probably at 5,300, but it's another team where just nothing really stands out to me. I think I would get to Ball, Rozier, and Bridges first, but it's still just nothing more than like secondary plays.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm not seeing a ton here either. Chicago at Detroit. Maybe we'll have better luck in this one. Chicago, Nikola Vucevic is questionable for this one. So that ended up being pretty big last time when he missed the game. We got a Tristan Thompson start. He was matched up against Embiid, so I was like, foul trouble could be an issue, but they really needed him. He played about 30 minutes. So versus Detroit, Marvin Bagley starting at center. If Vucevic misses this one, would you go back to Thompson?
Yeah, especially where he has power forward eligibility on DraftKings. I am looking now. I'm not sure if he does on FanDuel or not, but that's really big. He has power forward on FanDuel as well. So Yeah, he's minimum salary. So I think if Vooch is out, you're going back to Thompson. More so on FanDuel, but on DraftKings he looks pretty good as well. It's a good matchup against Detroit. There is less foul risk. Obviously, can get in foul trouble against anybody, but nobody on Detroit poses the same threat as Joel Embiid. And Thompson's not a bad point per minute guy. You got around 28 to 30 minutes in the last game, despite the foul trouble. I would expect him to play around there regardless. But, maybe if he's not in foul trouble, he plays 32 or 33. But being able to slot him in at power forward is really useful. And kind of like I'd mentioned before, at least right now, there's not a lot of really good inexpensive value. Like there's some good value in the sense of like, this guy is underpriced. But normally those guys on this particular slate are like in the mid-range. They're not down around 4,300. So if you got Vooch out, Thompson, the way things look right now, would move pretty quickly up the list.
Definitely. And another guy I'd be looking at is Javonte Green. Last game he played about 37 minutes. So that's a lot higher than he normally gets. He's only 3,600. Clearly that was because of Vooch being out, because the centers only played about 20. They only played about 2/3 of the game. So would Javonte Green become a priority if Vooch is out?
I think he would be a good value. The one concern I have is that in that last game, they initially went to Tony Bradley as Thompson's backup, and he was just getting obliterated by Joel Embiid to the point where they just said, okay, screw this. We're going small because we can't stop him one way or the other. We may as well, just have our better players out there. I don't like there's nobody on Detroit that I think is going to make it so Tony Bradley can't be on the floor. So then you're just talking about, does the coaching staff want to use him as the backup center or not? I don't really know the answer to that. They certainly could just go with those small lineups again. But I do think if they want to use Tony Bradley, you're not going to run into the same problem against Detroit that they did last game. And if that happens, you're probably talking about Green playing like 30 minutes instead of 36.
Yeah, fair enough. 30 minutes would still be pretty good, but nothing to lock in for sure. Now, Levine and DeRozan, always solid options. Are they standing out at all tonight?
Not so. If Vooch is in, I think DeRozan, Levine, and Vooch kind of just become the equivalent of Ball, Rozier, Bridges, or Tatum, Brown, Williams, where they're fine. It's a good enough matchup. They are all high upside players. But where I think they really get interesting is if Vooch is out, you do get a bump in production for both of DeRozan and Levine, and their salaries are reasonable. They're still pretty expensive at $9,800 and $8,600 respectively. But if you take Vooch out, you are getting a usage bump. They do both start to look better.
Definitely. Now on the Detroit side, we have Frank Jackson out. Isaiah Stewart is the newest guy to the injury report. He has a knee injury, nothing extremely serious, but Bagley is expected to get the start in his place. And he's only played 6 games with the Pistons so far, but it seems like they've kind of liked what they've seen. And they don't really have, I guess they have Kelly Olynyk behind him, who also, they've played him a decent amount in the past. So how are you kind of balancing Bagley versus Olynyk, and how do you value them tonight?
I'm reading pretty heavily into the second half rotation from the last game because Stewart was hurt in the first half of the Pistons last game. So you got Bagley starting the second half, and then what I think was really interesting, and there's no guarantee it plays out this way, but just based on what we've seen from the Pistons, I think it's the most likely outcome. We basically just got Bagley and Olynyk playing center. So you didn't get Olynyk alongside Bagley at all in the second half. That's not to say that they can't play them alongside each other, because normally they do play alongside each other. But what we got in the second half was those two at center, Olynyk essentially just staying in his normal role where he's the backup center. And then you got more minutes for Isaiah Livers. I think that's the most likely case, just because the Pistons haven't done anything recently to suggest that like they're looking for reasons to play Kelly Olynyk more minutes. I think it's more likely that they just say, oh, cool, like we get to get Isaiah Livers on the floor more and see, what he has to offer. He's been playing relatively well. And so that's my expectation, is that you get something like 30 minutes for Bagley, 18 for Olynyk. And that makes Bagley look like a very, very good value, especially with power forward eligibility. It makes Olynyk just be somebody where if he plays what I think he's going to play, he's not that useful. if I'm wrong, he does have a ceiling. Like if I'm wrong and he plays 24 minutes because he gets 6 minutes alongside Bagley, he's a good play. Or if Bagley gets in foul trouble and Olynyk gets to 24 minutes that way, he's a good play. But I do think it would be a mistake to go into this saying I think the most likely outcome is that Olynyk plays 24 minutes.
For sure, yeah. I think Kelly Olynyk, kind of an interesting GPP play because he is such a good per minute scorer. And Bagley certainly could get into foul trouble. But you're not getting a ton of leverage. Bagley's only 19% projected owned. Kelly Olynyk's 3%. So, yeah, I think Bagley, I like what I've seen from him so far. I was at the game Friday in Detroit, and it seems like he's playing with a lot of energy. He fits kind of what the Pistons are looking for with like a young, up-and-coming player, kind of giving a second chance after a lot of injuries over his first few years. So I think he's meeting all the criteria for me. Anyone else on the Pistons that you're looking at?
Not really. I think outside of Bagley, I think everybody's pretty much correctly priced. Like Cunningham, Grant, Bay certainly have ceilings. I do think there's a case that, Grant could play a few more minutes here. In games where everybody's been healthy or most players have been healthy, you've really just been seeing around like 30 minutes for Grant. Maybe you get 32 to 34 here, but at 6,600 on a 12-game slate, that's still pretty marginal. I think outside of Bagley, everybody's pretty much just where they should be.
Oh my gosh. Okay, John Kim just dropped a super chat. Thanks for the super chat. He said he ran good and won the Top Shot All-Star VIP Pass NFT, and he signed up because we were talking about it on the show. I don't know if you followed that, but that thing, it's like entry to the All-Star game for like 5 years, and you can sell it. I think it's worth like $50K or something.
Really?
Following that?
That's all. I was not following that. That's cool.
That's like a pretty sick win because it was a free raffle basically. So
yeah, that's awesome. I just thought it was just like a random all-star pack, and I was like, yeah, cool. It's Top Shot. They'll make 100 million of them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this one I think it's actually pretty good. Well, I don't know exactly how much it's worth, but that's pretty exciting. All right.
150K retail. Yeah, that'll do it.
150. Dang.
Congrats.
Wow, that's sick. All right, so John, congrats. All right, hopefully we can keep it going with some NBA takedowns too. NBA DFS, I mean. All right, Phoenix at Miami. Phoenix, Cameron Payne dominated the last game as a super chalk play. I think he was like 85% owned in the like $15 on DraftKings. So his price has gone up though a lot, and Devin Booker is back today. So one of the things I'm looking at is Devin Booker. He's coming off the COVID protocols list. He missed 4 games. So I'm kind of like, I'm pretty much just fading Booker. I feel pretty confident because it's like, even if he's playing 100% of his normal minutes, like he's not like a lock play or anything, but do you think there's a decent chance he doesn't play a full run?
I have found the COVID thing to be really, really difficult to get a gauge on. I do think I slightly disagree in that if you tell me Booker's playing 36 minutes without Chris Paul, I think he's fantastic at 8,800. But I do agree with you in that I have no idea if he's playing 36 minutes. If he plays like 30 minutes, that's enough of a price tag on this slate where I'm not really interested. But if you assume that he's playing close to full run, I do really like him here because you do get a nice bump. Although, I mean, Payne being in the lineup still, presumably playing a lot of minutes, he is a high usage guy that's going to cut in the Booker's assist totals anyway. So you would want to scale back, from what we saw before COVID when Paul was out. But I would certainly be interested in Booker if he's not going to be limited.
I think here's my play is, I don't know if you do many single game parlays, but you can take the under on all the Booker props and you like leverage them together. And like, if there was a minutes limit or something, like you could win big and there's like a reasonable chance. So that's kind of how I might tackle that situation. If you're in a sports betting legal state. So
I'm in a sports betting legal state, but I'm also in a sports betting legal state that hasn't figured out how to roll out a sports betting app in the last year.
Oh man. Well, when you're in Tennessee, you can get in some bets at least. Cool.
Yeah. Already, I was talking to Siege the other day, and he reminded me that whatever games I end up avoiding on the live final slate, to just bet the over for when they go to overtime.
Yeah, that's a good hedge. All right. So I think Booker being back kind of mitigates some interest in other guys, although okay, so Cameron Johnson's out, so that's some minutes that can go around, but nothing's really popping out at me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, same here. I do still have some interest in Cameron Payne, especially because we only have him projected for about 12% ownership. His salary came up, but if Booker was out, he would still be a very easy play at 6,500, even with the difficult matchup. Booker being in obviously cuts into his production, but at the same time, Payne's played 330 minutes alongside Booker this year. He's averaged 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 22.5% usage rate. He has a 25.5% assist percentage. So it's clearly a thinner play than it was yesterday when he was 5,300 without Booker and deservedly 80+% owned. But if he's only going to be 12%, especially the way the slate stands right now, where there's not that much value that stands out. Not to say that paying at 6,500 is the type of value that's going to let you get like studs into your lineup, but right now it's kind of difficult to get to those studs. And if you do go a little bit more balanced, I still think Payne has a ceiling.
Yeah, definitely. He's showing up as more than 5x value here, so definitely someone worth having some exposure to.
Also, what's your take on DeAndre Ayton? Because we only have him projected for 1% ownership right now. I do think there's a lot of very good center plays. Right now, the best point per dollar value on the slate, in my opinion, is a center. You have a ton of guys at the top, but Ayton's not a super high usage guy, even without Booker. He was around like 21% or something. He's averaged 1.14 DraftKings points per minute with Booker on this year. I still think that if you get like 32 minutes from Ayton at 7,300, he still looks pretty good.
Yeah, he looks all right. I think, Aiden's the kind of guy that he's not impacted a ton with other guys being in or out, I would guess, because he does score about, the font is so small in here. He scores about like 85% of his baskets assisted. So maybe having a little bit more ball movement on the court with Booker being back could be good for Aiden even.
Right.
All right. Let's go to Miami. Jimmy Butler is questionable. I think if Jimmy Butler does play, it's pretty hard to get to these guys, but if he's out, that's a nice bump for everyone. So how are you breaking this down?
Yeah, I'm with you. If he's in, it's just another one of these teams where they're essentially healthy. The pricing is essentially correct. And if you get to some Butler, some Bam here or there, it's fine. But it's going to be pretty difficult to prioritize this team. If Butler is out, they're still relatively expensive, but you would expect more playing time for Tyler Hero. You would expect a bump in usage for Kyle Lowry and for Bam. So they would at least be decent plays. Whereas right now, I think it's more so you're just kind of throwing them into lineups here and there based on their talent level. And mostly then it's even just Bam and Butler more so than Hero and Lowry.
Definitely. What I like to do is in our model kind of like mess around with, okay, Butler's out. How does that impact the projection of other players? So it's frozen. I don't use my main computer for these streams, so it's a little slower, but all right. Let's okay, so I'm calculating here. Okay, Kyle Lowry's projection goes up like 4 points. Bam goes up like a couple of points. Gabe Vincent, I assume he'd get a lot of minutes. So we'll break this down, circle back if that does come to fruition. All right, before next game, I got to mention on the site, we got plenty of tools and content to add to your arsenal. You can get the whole site access for $29.95 a week. That's every sport. So you get the PGA for the players. We got NHL with the crew led by Jake Hari, and college with Matt G. I mean, there's pretty much every contest on these sites. We have some coverage for soccer. We got Counter-Strike, League of Legends. The one sport we don't have yet is the Madden Sims. I don't know if you tried that, but that would be pretty funny to get in on. All right, but we have all the sorts of tools, including player projections, ownership, the boom bust tool, and NBA. And you can get the NBA specific package for $16 a week and Express for $5 a week. So there's a lot of different options for your price point. Stop guessing, start winning. All right. Atlanta at Milwaukee. Atlanta, Kevin Huerter is back for this one, probable technically, but that kind of makes it a little bit tougher for guys to get big minutes. One exception could be John Collins, who's been working his way back from injury last game. He played 26 or 7 minutes, and he's cheap because of this injury, $6K. So he kind of looks like maybe a reasonable guy to take a shot on. I'm not seeing much else. How about you?
Yeah, and he's one of those where, like, with the way the slate stands right now, if you assume everybody questionable is in, I think Collins looks pretty appealing just because he's 6K flat. He played like 26, 27 minutes in regulation last game, but I do actually put some stock into the fact that he played overtime and it got him to 31 or 32 minutes, because that shows us that physically he can play 31, 32 minutes. And I think it just makes it a little bit more likely that, maybe the Hawks don't like hold him back for one more game. They just say like, okay, whatever, you played 32, go do it again. And at 6K, like he certainly has upside, but it is the type of guy where if you do get guys ruled out, you do get value opening up, you're pretty quickly from a roster construction standpoint, just getting away from that price tag in most, like that price range in general, because there's so many good pay up options today. So my interest in Collins does very heavily depend on a lot of things that aren't actually related to John Collins. But it is a favorable price tag. I think Trae Young at 10-3 is okay as well. His usage comes down a bit with Collins back. His assist percentage goes up a little bit. His point per minute production comes down like 1/10 of a point, but still has a massive ceiling. The issue you run into is you have just so many pay up options. You have Murray, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, just a million guys that you can go to. McCollum's less expensive than Young. So tournament play, sure, but not anybody I'm building around.
Yeah, definitely. Significantly cheaper on FanDuel, 9,500, so you could look there. On the Milwaukee side, okay, so Pat Connaughton and George Hill are out. Wendell Wigington is out. I know that's a heartbreaker for you, but okay, so Grayson Allen is back. Besides that, nothing too much exciting on the Bucks today. But Giannis is always a pretty solid option. So how's he fitting into the slate today for you?
He looks great. One thing that I think makes Giannis look a little bit better than some of the other pay up options, and this is pretty much the case whenever Giannis plays, is that he has forward eligibility. On DraftKings is power forward, on FanDuel it's small forward and power forward. Whereas most of the guys that you're going to talk about as pay ups, basically with the exception of LeBron, are point guards or centers. So if you go to Giannis, even if you don't like him quite as much as somebody like Jokic, for example, if you go to him, you can still build some really highly projected lineups where you pay up there and then you take some of the value at center, or some of the high upside point guards, and you just get a really, really good lineup. Whereas if you go, it's just how opportunity cost works in general. If you spend basically the same salary as Giannis, or even a little bit more at center or at point guard, then you're going to relatively weaker small forward options in a lot of cases, or power forward options, than you would like their point guard counterpoints. So from a roster construction standpoint, I kind of always like Giannis for that reason. This game's likely to be high scoring. It's got a relatively close spread, which is nice. He's up there with Jokic as far as best point per minute fantasy producers in the league. So I have nothing bad to say about Giannis, other than there's still just massive opportunity costs because there's so many guys to pay up for tonight.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's Giannis looks like a solid play. Usually these top price guys, it depends on how much values are on the slate. And so far on today's slate, it's about average, but that can change pretty quickly. So we'll see how that ends up playing out over the next hour and a half. All right, Lakers at Houston. This one's really tough because LeBron James is questionable. He did miss the last game. If he plays, he looks like he could be in an awesome spot, because Houston is they're really bad defensively, and also the Lakers aren't good, so he'll probably have to play a lot of minutes and in a great matchup. So if LeBron does play, he looks pretty amazing. Is he going to be one of your top pay ups tonight?
Yeah, I really like LeBron if he plays. The way I view LeBron is that when he plays, I don't just even though I know he's dealing with the injury, and Frank Vogel had even said that it's been a lingering injury, but that typically it just doesn't affect him enough to where he has to sit out. But he did have to sit out last game. But I just view it as if LeBron says he's good to go, LeBron, it's not like you have a coach that's going to be like, oh, well, I think we should take it easy, whatever. Like if LeBron feels fine, he's going to just say, no, I'm playing 37 minutes and he's going to go do it. It's a very good matchup against Houston. The same benefits that I mentioned with Giannis apply to LeBron with small forward eligibility. He's a little bit less expensive. He's averaged 1.5 to 1.6 DraftKings points per minute without Anthony Davis this year. And then for whatever it's worth, I mean, it's kind of a narrative, but like, if the Lakers are going to make any sort of noise between now and the end of the season, it just has to be LeBron taking over. Like it's getting to the point where late enough in the year now where it's either they're not going to make the playoffs or LeBron's going to just do a ton of great stuff the rest of the year because everybody else on this team is horrible. So I do like LeBron quite a bit if he's in.
My money was on Dwight Howard and Russell Westbrook taking over, but I guess it could be LeBron. We'll see. But yeah, I think he's in an awesome spot. If he plays. If he doesn't play, then that's going to open up a ton of value too, especially in this matchup versus Houston. So who would be the guys you're looking for? If
LeBron doesn't play?
Yeah.
So I mean, I would go back to Westbrook, particularly on FanDuel. He's 6,800, 8,500 on DraftKings. Lofty and I talked about it a bit this morning. I almost think Westbrook's playing through an injury again because that's the only way I can describe what has happened to him. Like even when LeBron's not playing, I know why he's not good when LeBron plays, but it kind of just reminds me of last year, like the first half of last season when he was horrible and everybody was like, what happened to Westbrook? And then it's like, oh, he was playing with a torn quad and just didn't tell anybody. That's kind of how I almost think that's the case here, but something like that. But either way, the rates go up without LeBron and without Davis. I'd have a hard time not getting back to him in a really good matchup against Houston, especially on FanDuel, but even on DraftKings at 8,500. It would also make Malik Monk look better at 5,700. Melo would look pretty good at 5,300. Tough to trust any of those guys because for the most part, they're just not good. But the opportunities would be there and the matchup's great.
Yeah, I think Westbrook. Yeah, that's a good point about a possible injury because he was like pretty disappointing last game without LeBron. This isn't really a situation I'm going to be like planning my night around because there's only 3 games that lock before this out of 12. So I think if LeBron does get ruled out, everyone's going to be able to swap on all the Lakers that they want. So LeBron would look good. I can't remember did Taylor and Horton Tucker start because he would be pretty interesting if he gets a start.
Yeah, he started.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so those could be some guys to look at. On the Houston side, Dennis Schroeder is questionable. Garrison Matthews is questionable. He said he'd play Jayshawn Tate and Christian Wood are questionable. Wood missed shoot around and the last game, so highly questionable probably. So if some of these guys miss, who would you be looking at?
Yeah, it's a really weird team as far as the injuries go. If Wood misses, I think the very clear 1-to-1 is that Şengün at 5,100 with power forward eligibility looks fantastic. He played like 28 to 30 minutes last game. Now he gets a really good matchup. He's a very good point per minute guy. The kind of interesting thing is like if Wood is out, you're talking about one of the higher usage guys on the team. So maybe Kevin Porter looks a little bit better, but Şengün has a similar usage rate to Wood this year. So, and has a solid assist percentage as well. So I don't think you get a massive bump in terms of production for the normal starters if Wood is out, assuming Şengün is the one that replaces him in the starting lineup. But with or without Wood, I still think Kevin Porter Jr. looks fine at 6,300. And then if you start getting multiple guys out, like if Wood is out, if Schroeder is out or Tate is out, Matthews said he's going to play for whatever that's worth. But then, maybe you do just get a couple extra minutes for Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green. Eric Gordon at 4,300 maybe plays a little bit more. If Tate is out, I would expect Kenyon Martin Jr. at 4K to play a lot. If any of these guys are out and Matthews is in, he's a $3,200 small forward that can play 30 minutes. That would look like a pretty good value. So with the exception of Şengün, I don't think you're really talking about massive changes in production or guys that are really, really good point per minute guys getting a lot more minutes. But I do think if you rule out multiple guys, you do start getting to just, Garrison Matthews is going to be out there enough at 3,200 where he would look good. And same kind of thing with Kenyon Martin.
Nice. Thanks, Scotty, for the super chat. He says, thinking about a pivot to Giannis from LeBron, more upside at $400 more, or would you rather run Tatum? I really like LeBron over Giannis and Tatum, to be honest.
I don't think Tatum's at the risk of this looking very stupid in a couple of hours. I don't think Tatum's in the same conversation. You're talking about like a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy or a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy versus 1.5 to 1.6 for LeBron and 1.7 for Giannis. Right now, our ownership projection on Giannis or on LeBron is even lower than Giannis. I do think that's impacted by the Q tag. So if he's ruled in, the ownership goes up. But I actually wouldn't really worry much about the ownership between them because unless you get like a big gap in projection, I just don't think that ends up being the case because with this many games on the slate and with as many pay up options as we have, you're probably just going to end up talking about like, oh, this guy's 13% owned and this guy's 11% owned, where it's kind of just like, okay, who cares? They're both low enough owned. I'll just play whichever one I want or whichever one fits my lineup.
Yeah, definitely. LeBron, I'm looking for reasons to swap out to LeBron. It seems like all the factors are working in his favor today with the great matchup and a team that isn't a huge favorite. All right, Abel, thanks for the super chat. He says if Vanderbilt's out, can play Naz Reid and Cat together. Does Reid have enough upside for this correlation? I would say on a 12-game slate, like there's no need to force hoping Reid and Towns play a lot on the court together because that it does happen, but you want more surefire bets on a 12-game slate. What do you think?
Yeah, that's how I see it, especially because, I mean, it's going to sound kind of nitpicky, but Reed's 3,900 as opposed to like 3,100. So if it's just Vanderbilt out, then I wouldn't do it. If you get Vanderbilt out and you get Prince out and like Edwards is out, if they're just like, if all the Q guys are out, then I think you could consider it just because you're really thin at that point. But if you're just saying like Vanderbilt's out and the questionable guys are in, then I think Taurean Prince is playing a bunch of minutes. I think that Jaden McDaniels is going to get some minutes at the 4. You'll see, plenty of Beasley. And so even if they play alongside each other, you're probably talking about like 4 minutes or something where the real path to success for Naz Reid would come from Cat playing less for one reason or another. So to me, the answer depends on how many of these guys are ruled out. But if we're just assuming it's Vanderbilt, I wouldn't do it.
Definitely. Next game, Oklahoma City at Minnesota. Trey Mann is a new addition to the injured list for Oklahoma City. So that calls in the question who would start. The other point guard in the rotation is Theo Maledon, but they haven't really given him many minutes. I don't even know if it's like that important, but Maledon is 3,300. So maybe a source of salary relief, but Aaron Wiggins at 3,400 seems a little bit easier to bank on. And then Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has been is coming off a really great game. So I'm sure there'll be some interest in him. Who are you looking at from Oklahoma City?
I mean, I think Shea looks very good. I think 26% ownership is kind of crazy on this slate. Not that I like think he's a bad player or it's a bad spot or anything, but there are so many similar guys. He's very, very good without Giddey, no doubt about it. He's around a 1.5 fantasy point per minute player. But in terms of range of outcomes, you just have, you have Trae Young, you have DeJounte Murray, you have all of the, guys we already talked about, LeBron and Giannis and, Jokic we haven't gotten to. It's kind of crazy. It's just weird to me that someone's projected for 26% ownership on a slate with this many pay up options. So that is something I would pay attention to. I think he's a good play, but at that ownership, I think you probably can just find a lot of lower owned guys that give you a very similar range of outcomes. I assume Pokusevski is going to move back into the starting lineup without Mann, and they'll go with Wiggins at the 2. If that's the case, 5,800 Pokusevski in 30 minutes looks okay. Baisley looks okay. Wiggins, I mean, he's 3,400. He's probably playing 30 minutes. That in and of itself is fine, but you are talking about like a 0.665 fantasy point per minute guys. So, kind of be wary, I guess.
Yeah. So if Maledon does get a start, he could be interesting. If he doesn't, yeah, I think you're right. Pokusevski, his price has gone up a lot, so maybe not the most interesting. The one thing I just noticed with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is that over the last 15 games, his rebounding rate on the defensive end has been 17% compared to 13% on the season. So it does seem like maybe some of their roster changes are affecting his rebounding. So that was something that I hadn't noticed until just now. That makes me like him a little more. On the Minnesota side, everyone is questionable. Patrick Beverley, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Jared Vanderbilt, and Taurean Prince all questionable. So this one's kind of tough to break down. Do you have any insight into who might be in and out?
No, I think it's a really difficult one to break down. I don't really have a good feel for who's going to play or who isn't. It is a home game, so for what it's worth, I kind of lean towards guys that are questionable and can playing more so than on the road, just because teams I think typically try not to screw over their fans to some extent at least. But the way I see it basically is if Edwards is out again, it's a bump for Towns and Russell in particular in terms of production. Towns really the main one, and it's a bump for McDaniels in terms of playing time. If Russell is out, you probably get Beasley back in the starting lineup. It would make him look okay at 4,800. If Russell and Edwards are out, you're also talking about a lot of production for Karl Anthony Towns, somewhat of a bump for Patrick Beverley. If Beverly's out and like Russell / Edwards are in, it's probably still Malik Beasley starting. If they're all out, then you're probably getting like Jordan McLaughlin as a good value play. You're getting Jalen Noel as a high upside play at 3,400. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of it's tough because like half of the normal rotation players are questionable right now when you consider that Taurean Prince is also questionable along with Vanderbilt.
Thanks, Swami and Jimmy, for mentioning in the chat that the coach said Edwards most likely plays, and then he also said D'Angelo Russell also is more likely to play. So definitely not someone I'm going to plan around because this game it's not late enough to really warrant planning ahead. But if some guys are out, that would open up some value there. LeBron is going to play tonight, so that's a nice little thing to know.
I accidentally had turned on Do Not Disturb on my phone, so that's why I wasn't realizing any of the news that came through.
Oh yeah, there's nothing too crazy. LeBron being in is a good thing to know now, just so that we don't have to make crazy swaps later. All right, guys, before we get into the next game, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a DFS platform, but you also can kind of make these prop parlays where you put together a roster of 5 different props, and you kind of get you put together your roster has to be spanning more than one game, and you can choose, do you want to go for it broke, and if all of them hit you get paid, or there are some other things like if you get 2 out of 3 you get like a different payout. So it's fun to kind of weigh all the factors there, and they have so many different options for props that it's fun, not just NBA. But so let's make a prop parlay here. It looks like on our Prize Picks tool, which is free on the site, the most highest win percentage play is the Terry Rozier under on points. That's showing us a 65%er. With everyone in tonight, there's not really a ton of reason to take 21.5 as a line. So what are you looking at on Prize Picks?
Oops, didn't have that one ready. I think that the 30.5 points plus rebounds plus assists for Rozier looks pretty good, just because he has been playing so many minutes. I think you had said the points, but I like the points, rebounds, and assists as well. Beyond that, I need a second, but I do think that one looks good.
Nice. Yeah, I think okay, so some of the ones it's liking are the Corey Joseph over and Cade Cunningham under, but Killian Hayes just got ruled out, so maybe you can sneak one in on Corey Joseph over. I assume they're going to take that down and change the line, but that one looks nice. What you got?
Yeah, I was going to say Detroit probably had something open up there. I like the over 21.5 points for DeJounte Murray, just kind of otherworldly now without Derek White, and not a bad matchup against Toronto, likely to be a competitive game, likely to be high scoring.
Nice. So make sure to check out Prize Picks. They do have an awesome promo going on with the promo code Awesemo, where you can get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you sign up through our link and make a deposit at Prize Picks. And then you'll get a email within 24 to 48 hours after making your first picks on Prize Picks with your free month. So that's a nice little way to get a membership to the site if you don't already. So it's also a $100 bonus for Prize Picks. So Killian Hayes being out, it's kind of interesting because Saban Lee is also out for the Pistons. So Cade Cunningham and Corey Joseph are the only point guards. but both are starters. So, what do you think is going to happen here? Is Kojo going to switch to 3 rotations a half, and then that'll open up minutes for someone else?
Yeah, I think Joseph's the main beneficiary because I do think they'll just add somebody to the rotation. Like I think, Magruder could play more. They could just throw whoever the next guy up on their benches. But you have seen Joseph and Hayes typically playing somewhere around 48 minutes. So I think that there's a pretty good chance that Joseph goes from 22 to 24 minutes to maybe playing 28 to 30.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So
his rate and his rates take a hit alongside Cunningham, but if they end up staggering them, that's less of a concern as well.
Definitely. You almost want those minutes where they're with the bench unit, which he would presumably be on the court when Cunningham is not. So that's really valuable. Plus, he's showing up as 5 points above 5x on DraftKings. So I think Corey Joseph is kind of sneaking his way into being one of the top plays tonight. Try not to be a homer here, but I like me some Pistons now. All right. Let's move on to the next game, Orlando at New Orleans. On Orlando. We don't have too many injuries. Jalen Suggs is questionable. He has missed the last 2 games. When he did miss the last game, Gary Harris played a bunch. He's only 3,300. So that seems extremely low. Where RJ Hampton played a lot in the previous game with Suggs out. So I don't know exactly who'd get the run, but I know some value would open up. How are you playing this one?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting yesterday because Harris hadn't even been in the rotation or hadn't played the game before, and then he came back and played a bunch of minutes, which is basically what we've been seeing from him for most of the season. Now you also have Markelle Fultz out, so if Suggs sits, I think Harris probably plays a pretty nice chunk of minutes at 3,300. Similarly, I think you get more run from RJ Hampton at 3,600 than you got yesterday. Played 24 minutes yesterday. I think it's likely he would get back to around 30 today if Suggs is out. He's not a great point per minute guy, and his rates do take a hit, particularly his assist percentage, playing alongside Cole Anthony. But again, right now, at least with the lack of cheap value we have on this slate and the number of guys we'd like to pay up for, if Suggs is out, I'm going back to Hampton at 3,600 and I'm going to Gary Harris at 3,300.
Nice, man. That makes it easy. On the New Orleans side, Brandon Ingram continues to be out for this one. So last night we saw CJ. Maybe it was a couple nights ago, but anyway,
it was last night.
Oh, it was last night. Okay. It's hard to keep track as a DFS full timer what day everything is. All right. So CJ McCollum had a great game, but the Falcons got blown out anyway, which was pretty crazy. But Devontae Graham played a lot more off the bench, and I'd say McCollum, he's showing up as an amazing value in our projections today. And then Devontae Graham is also interesting. Who are your favorite guys on the Falcons?
I love CJ McCollum. I would have thought he was a good play here if Brandon Ingram were in, and with him out, it just looks even better. Limited sample, obviously, since he hasn't been there most of the year, but 143 minutes so far for McCollum without Ingram on the floor, 32.7% usage rate, and a 43.5% assist percentage. Even overall in the games he's played, you're talking about a 28% usage rate and a 25% assist percentage. So that would have made him look fine, and then now seeing a bump just makes him look even better. He had about a 34% usage rate in last night's game. Gets a good matchup too against an Orlando team that isn't good defensively and does play at a relatively fast pace. So I really, really like getting the McCollum. I think it's a bump for Jonas Valanciunas. He typically sees a bump in usage without Ingram. Now, some of that is replaced by McCollum, but whereas Valanciunas has about a 23.5% usage rate since McCollum came over, I think you see him getting back to that 25-26% range. He's in a spot where he can grab a ton of rebounds against Orlando, makes him look pretty good. As far as value goes, Devontae Graham, I am expecting to come off the bench again like he did yesterday, but he got 24 or 25 minutes yesterday, and that was a game, like you said, that blew out. If that game's competitive down the stretch, I think you're getting more run from Graham. He closed the first half in place of Jackson Hayes. I think in the second half, if it's competitive, there's a lot of ways he can get into the closing lineup because Hayes doesn't close all that frequently. You can also, like if you're behind, you could have Graham close over Tony Snell. He's not a really high usage guy playing with McCollum. He had an 18.5% usage rate yesterday, but still at 3,900, it's going to make him look pretty good. And then as far as has some potential fringe plays here. Najee Marshall got garbage time run, but still was going to play around like 18 to 20 minutes. He's only 3,400. Billy Hernan-Gomez is 4K. He's back to being the backup behind Jonas Valanciunas. On average, that means like 16 or 17 minutes, but he's such a good point per minute guy that if we don't get a lot more value opening up, I don't mind gambling on him in tournaments and just hoping that he happens to destroy Orlando and maybe get a couple of extra minutes.
Nice. Yeah, I think that this is a definitely interesting one here. So CJ McCollum, definitely a guy that you want to be putting in your lineups here. Let's take a look at the ownership since it is free today. We got McCollum at 40% ownership. He's one of the more popular players, but when a guy's projected for 50 and he's at 9K, that's pretty good. So does the ownership make you, how is that affecting your strategy, if at all?
It's not a huge deal to me just because there are so many options on a slate of this size. I think McCollum is very clearly one of the best plays on the slate. I'm not going to go out of my way to not play one of the clear best plays on the slate when I know I can just get relatively low-owned guys in a bunch of other spots in my lineup because there are so many plays that it's going to naturally make plenty of good plays be relatively low-owned.
Nice. Next game, New York at Dallas. New York, they are missing quite a few guys today. Cam Reddish, he has been playing, but he's out today. Obi Toppin, Nerlens Noel, Quentin Grimes remain out. So that has tightened up their rotation a little bit. In addition, Mitchell Robinson is questionable. If you miss this one, you'd be looking at a Taj Gibson or Jericho Sims start most likely. Probably Taj because he played a lot in the game last time when Mitchell Robinson was injured. So well, how do you feel about Taj Gibson tonight if Mitchell Robinson is out tonight?
I mean, as good as I guess you possibly can feel about Taj Gibson. He started the second half last game. Tibbs said today he doesn't know if Gibson or Sims would start if Robinson's out. But I think anybody that has ever paid attention to Tibbs can feel pretty confident that it's going to be Taj Gibson because Tibbs just loves that dude. He's power forward eligible on DraftKings. He's 3,400. He's like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. He's not someone that you're like feeling good about, but I've said it a couple of times. There's right now, there's not a lot of cheap value that you do feel good about. So getting, to somebody like Gibson and hoping he gets like 20 to 24 fantasy points can still be worth it when it gets you to Giannis or whoever your favorite, LeBron or whoever you want to pay up for. So I think that, helps. It is worth noting, I think, that last game, the closing lineup was Randall at center. And that's not something we've seen a lot of this year, but it's certainly something that they could do. Like they have a lot more in the way of wings on this team than they do bigs. There's no real reason that Randall can't close at center. So it's no guarantee that you get a 48-minute, timeshare between Gibson and Sims. But with power forward eligibility at the cheap price tag, if Gibson's starting, I think you still take shots at him.
Definitely. I think he'd be a good play. I did just see a retweet from our Awesemo NBA account led by News God. Nikola Vucevic is feeling better of a game time decision versus Pistons per Coach Donovan. So kind of interesting there. So that makes it feel like he's more likely to play. All right, on New York, it seems like
they said he was going to play. They thought he was going to play last game too, though.
That's true. New York, it seems like the pricing isn't favorable. So the main play I have here is the Randall under in points. I know on Locks Before Locks, they were liking that one too. So from DFS standpoint, are you seeing much here?
Not really. Barrett, I think, is still probably the guy that I would want to get to the most. He has point guard small forward eligibility on DraftKings too, which is pretty useful. He has close to a 30% usage rate without Kemba and Derrick Rose on the floor this year. He's likely to play 38 to 40 minutes. So Barrett, I think, is a good play. But that being said, I think the price tag is also pretty appropriate for him. There's still some upside, but it's definitely gotten up there. Alec Burks at 5,600 is okay, but we know he doesn't produce at that high of a rate when he's playing with Randall and Barrett. And then somehow Randall's price, well, not somehow, he's had a couple of good games recently, but his price tag went up to the point where it's just so hard to get to him instead of like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Trae Young or, other guys in that price range. It's almost like if this were a shorter slate, I would like Randall at that price tag because like you could pay up to be contrarian. But on a slate of this size, that only gets you so far when, you're talking about like 8 or 9% ownership to Trae Young probably, and then like, 3 to Julius Randle. It's kind of just like, oh, well, I already got a contrarian play that looked better without having to go that far down the list. If he plays center, though, it should make him look better.
Yeah, I think on a 12-game slate, you don't have to get too far off the board anyway. So Randall, I mean, he's not off the board, but the pricing isn't great. On the Dallas side, Jalen Brunson's probable for this one. He missed the last game. So that makes it a little less exciting for like Dinwiddie or something. But Luka Doncic is the main attraction here. The only problem is he's 12,300. So compared to LeBron and Giannis, maybe not quite as appealing. How does Luka stack up for you?
Yeah. So one thing I forgot to mention it, but I'll mention it quickly. If Mitchell Robinson does play, I like him at 5,200. He's almost definitely going to be low owned, and if he avoids foul trouble, he's probably playing 30 plus minutes in a good spot. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But as far as Luka goes, clearly the best guy on Dallas, but doesn't really stand out compared to the other top pay up options. I don't think and I don't mean that in the sense like I don't want to play Luka. I just mean like I'm not pointing to Luka and saying like, oh, well, instead of playing any DeJounte Murray, I'll just make it all Luka Doncic because I think they all these guys look pretty similar. Giannis and Jokic are better point per minute guys. Luka has a little bit more favorable positionality than Jokic since he's a point guard, but they all just look pretty similar. The matchup isn't ideal; like it should be a pretty slow paced game, but I think they all just kind of look pretty similar. Beyond him, I did mention Jalen Brunson in the DraftKings tournament plays video earlier, just because he's projected for like 2% ownership with a 6% chance of being optimal. Certainly not the kind of guy that you're building around or saying like, oh, I think Jalen Brunson is the clear edge to this slate and just jamming him into lineups. But if this does end up being a slate where a lot of value doesn't open up, you are probably getting 34 minutes or so from him at 6,500.
Nice. Yeah, Brunson's kind of appealing. But yeah, not too much on this team in general, aside from Luka. Toronto at San Antonio. Toronto, Fred VanVleet's feeling better. He's back today. But he's missed 5 games. What did you worry at all about not playing like his usual like high 30s?
I'm not overly concerned with it. It's certainly a risk, but I also just kind of tend to think that if he's not ready to go, they wouldn't play him. And also, I think Nick Nurse is a crazy person. So I think that my best guess is that you're getting like 36 minutes from VanVleet. And even that would be, like a few minutes less than his season average. But I think that's a pretty reasonable projection. And if it is 36, he still looks pretty good at 8,200 in a good matchup against San Antonio. Obviously, if he plays like 30 or 32, you're likely to be disappointed. But I think 36 would actually make him look pretty good. And on the other hand, it's tough to get to much else on Toronto because we've seen price tags just come up as a result of VanVleet being out. Siakam can certainly have a good game, but a little bit overpriced at 9,500. Barnes is up, Trent's up, Boucher is up. So to me, it's kind of just VanVleet or move on.
Yeah, I mean, can I interest you in Pascal Siakam at 8,300 on the blue site? Because that's a good salary. Yeah, the salaries in FanDuel are so much lower for Toronto. He's the 3rd highest owned guy on the slate, and our ownership projections at 30%. Fred VanVleet's only 7,300. So I think that this one depends a lot on the site you're playing on DraftKings. A little bit overpriced on FanDuel, much more reasonable. So depends on the site you're on. On the San Antonio side, Keita Bates-Diop and Romeo Langford are out. Everyone else is back today. So how does that affect who you're liking from the Spurs today?
It kind of just makes it, for the most part, the DeJounte Murray show. He's 11-3. Like, he's obviously expensive. He's $1,000 more than guys like Young and Gilgeous-Alexander that do, at the very least, give you similar upside. Gilgeous-Alexander even produces at a similar rate without Josh Giddey as Murray does without White. But this is likely to be a pretty high scoring game. It's likely to be competitive. If the ownership on Murray is relatively low, I definitely think that's interesting. And right now we have him at 2%. I mean, this is someone that can still go for 60, 70 fantasy points. So I like Murray, but from a prioritization standpoint, I think I agree that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should be more popular than DeJounte Murray. I think that getting 13-1 odds between the two is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. DeJounte Murray, he is a little bit pricey, maybe better price on FanDuel, but has that elite upside. And then there's some other guys you could take a shot on, but not great from a value perspective, like Vassell or Keldon Johnson. But all right, before we get to the next game, I want to mention our other sponsor, Breaks of God. So I've been having some fun doing these card breaks. Got a lot of NFTs. It's a lot harder to get cards because you actually have to like go and buy them at a store or something. But Breaks of God has made that a lot easier. What you do, you sign up for a spot in the break. I've been doing a lot of NBA ones, so they'll have like 10 different spots, and they'll open a box of cards, a box of packs. So there's a lot of them, and you each get 3 teams. They're sort of kind of like high, maybe middle, and low, so everyone gets at least one desirable team. And you can get like cards from a lot of different eras. I did a 2012 to 2013 one, and they're like pulling all these guys. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. It's pretty cool. So you can get a 30% discount on your first break if you go to the link in the video description, breaksofgod.com/A30. And make sure to follow them on Instagram at Breaks of God. And maybe I'll see you guys on some of these breaks. Pretty fun. All right. Denver at Sacramento. Denver, Will Barton and Bones Highland are questionable for this one. Will Barton missed the last game. And then Jokic, obviously, he's always someone we want to be targeting. Matchup for Sacramento, not the greatest team, so that's a good factor for Jokic. How are you feeling about Jokic tonight?
Fantastic if you can get there. You're going to never feel bad about getting to Jokic, but especially in a spot like this. I mean, it's a good matchup against Sacramento, 7-point favorites on the road. Relatively unlikely the game gets completely out of hand. Sabonis being out obviously makes it more likely, but the game being in Sacramento, it's pretty likely you're getting close to full run from Jokic. Will Barton being questionable, like if he's out, that's a bump for Jokic, which it's insane to think that Jokic can actually see a bump in usage and a bump in assist percentage, but he does when Barton's out because nobody else on his team does anything. It would be a potential benefit for Monte Morris as well, but assuming Barton's in, to me, it's kind of just Jokic is the clear priority if you can get there. Barton, Gordon, Morris, like they're all in good matchups, but I think they're kind of just priced where they should be for their 30 minutes or so where they just kind of admire what Jokic does on a basketball floor.
Yeah, definitely. So Barton could be a contrarian play. The pricing on these guys isn't the greatest, so I think we can move on to Sacramento. Sacramento is more interesting because you have Sabonis out due to suspension tonight. I actually didn't catch what he did. Like, what happened there?
He bumped the ref, kind of, sort of.
Oh man,
it's nowhere close to the most egregious thing that's happened this year. Like, it was a really bad suspension.
Oh man, that's lame. There's this one that happened to the player in the Chicago Sky where the ref like walked backwards into her and then ejected her from the game. So like those refs get crazy.
Yeah, my favorite's always in the NFL when there's like a pile and the ref just like throws himself into the pile and the player like pushes him off because he doesn't know who just jumped on him, and then the ref gets mad.
Yeah, man. So the I guess refs probably do a lot of good things too, but in this
I've never seen one.
Nah. All right, so the net result is Damian Jones is likely to start at center. And this is a really tough matchup versus Jokic. So they definitely want the guy who's most capable of defending Jokic out there as much as possible. You have to think that's not Alex Len. So Damian Jones is kind of the answer by default here. So he's one of the more popular players on the slate. How confident are you feeling with Damian Jones?
Pretty confident. I mean, he's just clearly been ahead of Alex Len in the rotation. He's been the backup center. He was playing well, before the Sabonis trade when he got opportunities also. So I mean, I don't feel confident in the sense that like he obviously could just get in foul trouble immediately and play fewer minutes than we would like. But I feel pretty confident in him as a fantasy producer when he is on the floor. He's around a 0.9 to 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. If he's able to avoid foul trouble, injury, all of that, I don't really see any reason why he wouldn't be playing at least like 28 minutes or so. And so the fact that he's a center only on both DraftKings and FanDuel is a little bit, does kind of suck, but at the same time, with the way things look right now, he's just, to me, very clearly the best cheap value. Somebody that finally lets you open up some roster spots, get elsewhere. I mentioned him specifically on FanDuel in my tournament plays videos earlier because he was only projected for like 12 or 13% ownership as a result of the massive opportunity cost at center. And so on the one hand, it is risky because you could potentially have, like, Jones could play a pretty decent game and still lose by 40 to 50 fantasy points to Jokic at the same position, which is always kind of difficult to come back from. But at the same time, it's just going to open it up so that you can pay for, the payout point guards or the payout forwards that we really like as well, and just get a good point per dollar play at center. On DraftKings, it's less of an issue since you can still roster two centers. You can play Jokic with Jones if you want to. And he just, it's going to let you get a lot of good plays into your lineup. If you wanted to take, if you wanted to take like a more contrarian, negative correlation type approach, Alex Len at 3K certainly has a path to success, and he's going to be way less owned than Jones. But Jones, I think, is pretty clearly the higher probability guy, assuming he starts.
Yeah, I think Jones is the guy I'm most interested in just because the matchup, but the foul trouble could get. I mean, this is not a lock play by any means. You can easily see this going awry, but. Behind Jones, do you think there's a possibility they go small? It seems like there's a lot of disagreement out there about will Metu get in the rotation or Alex Len, or will they go small and play like maybe Trey Lyles plays a little bit more along with some more wings? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. The Jeremy Lamb piece, I think, is actually a really big deal here. He's questionable. He's missed the last couple of games. If he's out, I think that so. I think Lyles, he's kind of been playing 18 to 22 minutes outside of that first game when he started, when he played really, really well. I think he probably gets a few more minutes here, one way or the other. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you get less than 48 minutes at center between Jones and Len, and maybe Trey Lyles gets like 4 minutes there or something, which bumps him from like 22 to 26 or something like that. If Lamb is out, though, it really solidifies those minutes because then you're taking someone that had typically been playing like 22 minutes out again. And, you've already been getting a bunch of minutes for DiVincenzo. You've already been getting a bunch of minutes for Davion Mitchell with Lamb out. So if he's out again tonight, it's hard to say, oh, well, they're just going to play more wings and go small because like those guys have already been playing a lot of minutes. So if Lamb's out, I think it does really solidify Trey Lyles' minutes. If Lamb is in, I still think there's a pretty good chance you're getting 24 to 26 minutes from Lyles, which makes him look like a pretty decent value at lower ownership. Davion Mitchell at 3,600, I think if Lamb is out, looks really good. If Lamb is in, there's still a path to success for Mitchell. DiVincenzo's already gotten priced up pretty quickly, so that one's a little bit more difficult.
Now, what if Harkless is out?
I forgot he was even on this team. I mean, I assume like Metu's ahead of Harkless in the rotation at this point anyway.
Yeah, I'm just joking around here,
okay.
But yeah, I think that Lamb, he's like pretty well priced at 3,500, and some of these other guys on the Kings, like you can get some salary relief. Do you feel like if Lamb plays, guys like Justin Holiday, DiVincenzo, and Davion Mitchell have enough upside to be an opening lineup, or is that just sticking too deep?
I think it's more so the cheaper guys. So like DiVincenzo has recently been playing more minutes, but he's also up to 4,700. So like if Lamb is in, it's really tough for me to trust DiVincenzo. If Lamb is out, there's a path, but it's still 4,700, and I think I would rather just go cheaper. Davion Mitchell, I certainly think has the upside, especially if Lamb is out. You've gotten like 24 and then 29 minutes from Davion Mitchell. 3,600 is just a pretty good value if he's out. If Lamb is in, then you still probably get 22 to 24 minutes from Mitchell, and he still certainly could have success. Similarly, if Lamb is in at 3,500, I don't mind taking some shots on that either.
All right, we just got a news piece here. Jimmy Butler is out, so I think the last games they started Gabe Vincent. Now Kyle Lowry is back. Any predictions who would get the start? Would Caleb Martin move into the starting lineup? They said he's playing now. So
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Martin. It really could be anybody though. Like they could just go Vincent alongside Lowry and you move Robinson to the 3. So yeah, I mean, it could be Hero, but I assume they'll keep him on the bench. It could be Vincent, it could be Martin, it could be Strus.
What about your 7?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about
that. Yeah, me either. Sorry. Yeah, so with all this in mind, it still doesn't look like anyone's a great value unless if you're really thinking, okay, if we play Caleb Martin to get the start, if he played like 30 minutes, that'd be a pretty good value, but it just feels like we're kind of guessing at who's going to get those minutes. But I feel like Caleb Martin has started a lot with Butler out. So
yeah, like I think if I had to just guess at who it's going to be, it would be Martin. I still don't know how much that matters at 3,900, but yeah, if he got to like 28, 30 minutes, he looks okay. He's still not going to look like, a slam dunk, can't miss value type guy, because I do assume that Strus is going to get back into the rotation as well. Like, I don't think you're just going to get massive minutes from Caleb Martin. And I think Tyler Hero is going to be in the closing lineup. So, you still could just potentially not have Martin out there. Although he could also just be out there over Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, I think just the guy that's in the mix now, not anyone to go out of your way to get. All right, Portland at Utah. Portland, they're really on running on fumes here. Brandon Williams is coming off a big game where he got the start when Anthony Simons was out, and he put up a big game, but the price has come up significantly too. So is he worth this new price tag he's earned?
So on FanDuel, absolutely at 3,500. On DraftKings, I mean, yes, but again, it's just they did a really, really good job with pricing today. It's almost like they decided to get their shit together before the live final on Friday. Like 5,500 is a good price tag. He's a 0.9 to 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. He's in a difficult matchup against Utah, but he's still likely to play 32 to 34 minutes. He projects well, but it's not a cheap enough price tag where you're saying like, oh, even if he kind of disappoints individually, he's letting me get a bunch of other good plays into my lineup. Now it's a price tag where it's just like, no, I need Brandon Williams to actually play well if I'm going to play him. So I think he's a good value on DraftKings. I think he's clearly a top value on FanDuel.
Agreed. Yeah, on FanDuel, that's a lock. I mean, they don't really have any point guards behind him, so he's pretty much locked into a good run. All right, let's touch on the super chat from Goody. Thanks, Goody. He says you probably don't want to play Lyles and Lamb in the same lineup. I think that there's like a lot of positional flexibility in Sacramento, so I wouldn't necessarily correlate Lamb and Lyles that directly. So I don't think it's bad, but they're not really good enough to want to have 2 Kings in my lineup necessarily. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. For one, I don't think I would just get a lot of lineups with those two just because they project well, but not like well enough where I'm getting a ton. But I also, in situations like that, for the reason you said with the positional flexibility with the Kings, I prefer using max 2 rules where, I mean, obviously if you're capping the Kings at 2 players anyway, then you don't have to do it. But like if you have it set where like you're just capping all teams at 3 or something, doing something like max 2 of Jones, Lamb, Lyles, Len, like those guys, doing something like that makes more sense because like there's paths where the Kings say, okay, Trey Lyles is going to play the 5, where that's actually good for Jeremy Lamb. So like in some ways they actually positively correlate, in other ways they negatively correlate, but I don't want to necessarily just like block out ever getting them together for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, going back to Portland, all the guys are super cheap on FanDuel. We're expecting Watford and Eubanks to both start because that's what happened last game. And Watford's only 4,100. Eubanks is 4K. CJ Alby is 3,600. So how many Portland Trailblazers would you feel confident with in your lineup on FanDuel?
I mean, probably still just like 3 because it's a 12-game slate and you need raw points. It's not just about getting value, but pretty egregious price tags on FanDuel. So normally on a 12-game slate, my answer would just be 2. But like Brandon Williams, like you said, is kind of a free square. Even Josh Hart, though, at 5,900, I mean, there's blowout risk here. and he only played 28 minutes last game. But if this game's remotely competitive and you get 30 plus minutes from Josh Hart, the guy's going to do everything when he's on the floor. So 5,900 for him is just really cheap. Eubanks, Watford, Ellaby are all just completely mispriced. I don't mind getting the 3 guys there.
All right, Victor Oladipo, 15-minute limit. Actually, that's interesting. I was like, when I saw his name, I'm like, maybe he starts tonight. We'll have to see. But okay, on the Utah side of this one, no injuries reports, so it's probably not too interesting for DFS, to be honest. Do you see anything on Utah?
I'm interested in Mitchell and Gobert, but I just think they're a little bit underpriced. One thing that I do always try and note with Utah is typically outside of like the most massive blowouts, Quinn Snyder does give his guys some fourth quarter run at home. It's been a long time since we've seen a game in Utah and then a blowout. But back on February 14th, they beat Houston by 34 points at home. You still got like 31 minutes from Donovan Mitchell. He played like 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. Rudy Gobert was in foul trouble that game, but that is a trend that we've seen over the years from Quinn Snyder. So even though there is blowout risk here, it's twofold. One, they should be very, very productive while they're out there against this G League squad. And two, they're not that expensive, and there's a decent chance they still get at least a few fourth quarter minutes. So I'm interested in Mitchell and Gobert. I think Conley and Bogdanovich are a little bit more difficult.
Nice. Yeah, I think that the Utah guys are all fine. No one's really making me want to plant a flag here. Washington at the Clippers. Kristaps Porzingis got his first game in as a Wizard. Last one played about 20 minutes. So that puts him on pace to maybe play about 25 in this one. How do you think that affects Kyle Kuzma? Because Kuzma has been out of this world recently.
Yeah, he's been really good. I think that Porzingis being there, like, it can cut into Kuzma's usage a little bit, but at the same time, I think it probably just makes the team more efficient and gets Kuzma some better looks. So I don't necessarily think it has a huge impact on Kuzma. It's not like Porzingis is like a great rebounder either. So I think you still get some rebounding opportunities for Kuzma, especially now with, Porzingis still being limited. I think Kuzma has a high ceiling, but the price tag has also adjusted. And so it makes it pretty difficult to get there. Porzingis looked absolutely fantastic last game, but the issue is that I have a hard time thinking he's playing more than like 25 or 26 minutes. At 7,600, that makes it tough. Last game, they kept him to like 21, 22 minutes. They even had taken him off, late in the fourth quarter in a competitive game. So it didn't seem like they had much flexibility in that playing time. So it really just makes it tough for me to get to anything on Washington, given that I'm expecting Porzingis to be limited and that everybody else's price tags have come up from before Porzingis got there.
Nice. Yeah, I don't see a ton there. Jalen McDaniels is ruled out. I think that's actually kind of sneaky important because, so PJ Washington has been getting a ton of minutes recently, so that definitely locks in more playing time for him. Although the price isn't amazing there. But okay, let's go back to this game. Clippers. We have Norman Powell. He's out for the season. Covington's out this game. So it's kind of like Reggie Jackson's like the top player on the Clippers these days, which is kind of a sad scene, but I don't really see a ton of value here. You see anything?
It's pretty site dependent for me. On DraftKings, it's really difficult to, I think, prioritize anything. Reggie Jackson's up to 8,800, Zubats is up to 6,800, Morris is at 5,900. You can take some shots on Amir Coffey at 3,900. He should play 26 to 28 minutes, but that's not something I'm going crazy over. Same can be said for Luke Kennard at 4,300. Brandon Boston was in the rotation yesterday at 3K flat, but probably playing like 18 minutes or so. Where I do think they're interesting is on FanDuel. I think there's a little bit more to get to. Reggie Jackson is 7,100. That's a pretty good salary. You're talking about close to a fantasy point per minute guy in a good matchup. Plenty of upside for him. Marcus Morris at 4,600 just, I think, is mispriced. Should get around 30 minutes. He's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. So those two in particular stand out. You also have a minimum salary, Luke Kennard, who, if he gets hot, can certainly play 26 minutes. So on FanDuel, I think they look a bit better than on DraftKings.
Nice. All right, guys. So hopefully this gives you some ideas for who to play in these lineups tonight. Hopefully we get some big wins. Let us know with Awesemo HOF if you hit. And we got a whole show after us. So give us a like and subscribe. And stay tuned. We got Eric and Greg on Live Before Lock. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Prize Picks. Get some action down on some of their player prop DFS contests. So good luck tonight.
You have creative control.
All right, let's go, guys. Live before lock. Tyler, turn off that garbage music that you put together for this. Terrible, terrible job by you. We're all disappointed and booing himself. Many demerit points for Tyler Xander. Terrible, terrible job with the music today. I'm here joined by Eric Lindquist. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. The more times you like the video and subscribe, the better chance that we could hire a producer who knows good music. So you always want to get on that. Help us upgrade our sounds as we come in. Eric, we've got a big slate today, 12 games. It's been a little while since we've had a slate of this kind of size. And just kind of in general, how are you going to be approaching today's game? We have this many spots to choose from. I know at least for me, my player pool is pretty spread out.
My player pool is very spread out, but there's also pieces of concentrated chalk where you can pick one or two guys that if you're in love with a Damian Jones for whatever reason, if you're in love with CJ McCollum, which we all know I am again tonight, you're going to have plenty of opportunities and abilities to pivot off of chalkier plays at other positions. So you can still play your guys. You can still play your favorite plays on this slate and go way above the field on them if you so choose. but there's just so many good spots. I mean, looking at the guard position, all you have to do is think about last night. Even it was a 6-game slate, and you had Kyrie and Shea at completely unowned on that slate, go completely nuts. You just look at the top end of guard today. Would it surprise you if Luka, DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, Shea, De'Aaron Fox in his situation, Donovan Mitchell in his, CJ McCollum, pretty much everybody 8,900 or up has 60-point upside. So we are looking at a crazy GPP slate.
Yeah, and then as far as the injury report goes, we still have a bunch of names here also that are going to be pretty impactful. So I'll just read off all of these names here. These are the players that are still questionable. Keep in mind also, Eric and I, once the slate ends, we're going to be sticking around 30 minutes talking about prize picks, talking about odd shopper, and trying to find some good prop bets for you guys to pick. But here are the players who are questionable right now they're waiting on. Vucevic, Anthony Edwards, Christian Wood, D'Angelo Russell, Jalen Suggs, Mitchell Robinson, Patrick Beverly, Jared Vanderbilt, Jay Sean Tate, Will Barton, and that pretty much does it for the most significant names. You also got, like Dennis Schroeder, Torian Prince, some lower names, but I go on and on. There's 12 games. There's a lot of players on the injury report. So even the players we're rostering right now, a lot of this is probably going to change by the time we get to lock. Just kind of a overarching thought on the slate, because there are so many options, and I'm just kind of curious about this. Who is your number one favorite value option as of now and number one favorite pay up option?
Oh, man. Oh, well, I'm playing more on FanDuel, and you've got a guy that's at 3,500 in Brandon Williams, and I just don't know what you're supposed to do other than play this guy. He's at 76.6% ownership, and at 5,500 on DK, you don't really have to be doing too much there. If you really like that play, I'm not going to be going to him very much over on DK, but on FanDuel, I don't know how you get away from that. I'm playing a lot in that 44, so I'm kind of focused a little bit more over there. He's definitely my favorite value piece that exists there, but he's the Fields as well. My favorite pay up over on FanDuel right now is Donovan Mitchell. He's 8,400 and he's only 11% owned. And this is the other beautiful thing about a slate like this is you can kind of isolate one or two pieces, and it's not too hard to get over 11% and get to 30, 40% of somebody, make them a bigger stand, but it's also not going to just flat out make or break your night. So you can find these points of leverage where I think there's a lot of guys. I mean, as much as I love CJ McCollum, 8,600, he's going to be extremely popular over on FanDuel here tonight. And so as much as I loved him yesterday, I'm going to try to find some ways around that kind of ownership. And I think Donovan Mitchell, for less than a third of that number, is a guy that I am very much prioritizing. LeBron James at 10-4, but he's the popular guy. There's just so many paths where you can find guys to really go overweight that you like, Brandon Williams and LeBron, and then find one or two pieces. Donovan Mitchell, 8,400, Donovan Mitchell, my favorite guy to be getting up to on FanDuel.
Yep, I have no issue with any of those. Brandon Williams is going to be a pretty obvious one over on FanDuel, min price. We've got so many guys out for the team. He's going to be impossible to avoid. DK's done a little bit better of a job pricing him up. So I'll just throw out, before we start going position by position, my favorite value option and pay up option on DK as of now. My favorite pay up option, this should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody, Nikola Jokic. Dude's been crushing as of late. And he hasn't even had ownership lately. Like, he the other day goes for like 90 fantasy points on a smaller slate. And what was he, like 12% owned that day? Just some really ridiculous ownership on Jokic as of late. And today, right now, we have him project for 11%. Once again, pretty modest ownership for the guy who's been the best fantasy producer in the league. And then in terms of my favorite value option, I'm going Marvin Bagley for right now. We've got a Pistons team that's somewhat shorthanded in the front court now that Isaiah Stewart's out for a little bit. So Marvin Bagley, I think, is somebody who, as much as he struggled in his NBA career from a real life standpoint, somebody who's produced fantasy points when he's been on the court, and he's a pretty clear path to extended playing time there. So let's get into the position by position now, Eric, and starting with the guards. Who are the guys you're prioritizing the most at point guard and shooting guard? And I think just because of the size of the slate, we can't hit on everybody. Here's what I think is the best way to do it. Okay. You said you're playing a little more on FanDuel. Maybe you could cover some of the guys you're getting the most to on FanDuel, and I'll hit on the ones on DK, and hopefully that will kind of summarize it for everybody. We just aren't going to be able to talk about every pertinent player today. Correct.
It's impossible. It's 12 games. And I mean, I've been spending the entire afternoon looking at NBA, and there's always a piece of value that I've kind of overlooked here and there. I mean, Trey Lyles is a guy, and Damian Jones, he's a piece of chalk I'm excited to be talking about. But yeah, there's some of these plays that that you can definitely isolate on a 6 or 7 game slate, but just make no room for them or in my pool on like these massive 12 gamers. So I think just kind of hitting the broad strokes, going guard, forward, center, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking to approach it. And I want to ask you, first of all, with Brandon Williams, with you playing primarily on FanDuel, he said that he's your favorite value option, which how could he not be? Min price, considering the role he's likely to play without Anthony Simons in the mix. It is somewhat a fairly difficult matchup against the Utah Jazz. But what are you doing with him relative to his ownership? Everybody's going to say he's a good play. Everybody's going to say he's much must play in cash games. But 75% in tournaments, is that a number you're looking to be over or underweight to?
So I'm looking to be a little bit under 76%. Again, I'm playing quite a bit in like the 44, the $9, everything there. And it looks like, playing him around 65, 70% is where I'm going to come in at, just simply because there's so many upside guard options. And if you can hit on one of the like the cheapies at forward, I'm definitely not going to be paying down at center. I'm not going to be on FanDuel overlooking the likes of Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, who we're waiting on a crazy amount of news here from Minnesota that could make or break a lot of my lineups here. We're looking at Julius Randle, who can slide over from power forward to center there. 8,600 is kind of a different play for me over there. Rudy Gobert is 7,700. I see no reason that I'm really going to pay down and try to make Damian Jones a thing. I have so many concerns for him on FanDuel. On DraftKings, where you can play 2 centers and I can still get to Jokic. I can still do some other things. He'll make some more sense there. But for the most part, I'm looking at Brandon Williams being a guy that I'm just going to get in around 2/3 of my lineups on FanDuel and just kind of live with the result of it. But with Doncic, Shea, Russell Westbrook, it's just such a trap number, 6,800. I'm still trying to solidify what I want to do there. Fred VanVleet, who, because of the Q tag, 7,300, I don't think people are going to play him nearly as much as what they probably should. So he's somebody I'm prioritizing there as well. So many other guards that can put up 60, and Brandon Williams, we saw the ceiling last game. I very, very highly doubt we're going to see 50 out of him, but even 30 at the absolute flat min goes a long way to get upside in your lineups.
There's somebody I want to ask you specifically about next from a value perspective. Teo Maledon is fairly popular on DraftKings today, and I think it's warranted. He's only 3,300. If you look at the current injury report for OKC, and it's been really, really lengthy injury reports for the Thunder lately. For this game, we've got Trey Mann is out in addition to Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Derek Favors, Kenrich Williams. Now that Trey Mann isn't in the mix, I think we could see Teo Maledon start, or even if he comes off the bench, I expect him to play extended minutes. We've seen him succeed from a fantasy perspective when he's played extended minutes before. DK, like I said, the field is already there. On FanDuel, though, he's only projected for 0.6% ownership, and I kind of think of him as a pretty good contrarian potential pivot to Brandon Williams, or you could play both of them in the same lineup as well and spend up elsewhere. But is Teo Maledon somebody you're looking to get to on FanDuel as well? DK, there's more slots to fit him into, which is one of the reasons he's more popular. Also, he's a little bit more expensive. But even at 3,800, Teo Maledon, on the chance that he starts, I think he's pretty significant upside, and especially at very low ownership. Is he somebody that you like getting to on FanDuel as a contrarian option?
Yeah, for a 12-game slate, we've looked a lot at OKC today. Vit Krejci was a guy that came in and played, 29 minutes against Sacramento. Aaron Wiggins tweaked his ankle there. He started that second half. So I'm not sure if it's going to be him or Maledon. If Maledon starts, I think he'll probably get a little bit of attention, but probably not nearly enough. Maybe that news can come a little bit later. That would be useful. But I have a weird feeling that it's going to be Vit, this human being that, I never imagined talking about on a Live Before Lock show. I think he's probably the guy who ends up getting the start. We've got him pretty much split down the middle there. I would like to see Teo Maledon starting in order to get to him there. So kind of just a wait and see approach there. Vit, I would have absolutely no interest in playing. 0.52 fantasy point per minute player on a 12-game slate. Yeah, he's the absolute min, but there's just no upside waiting there.
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable way to look at the situation. There are a lot of crappy fantasy producers on OKC, like Aaron Wiggins, who's picking up some ownership, which not all that surprising with so many guys from OKC out. And we've seen Aaron Wiggins popular in the past, but I would kind of caution people about getting to Wiggins at too high of a clip. Because have you looked at this guy's game logs at all, Eric?
Which guys?
Aaron Wiggins?
Yeah, they're not good.
No. And the minutes have been there. He's started a bunch of games. Still, though, we have to go back to, so we had one game, 22.5 fantasy points against Utah last week. That was okay relative to his salary. That was the first time he had scored over 20 fantasy points since January 19th, the game against the Spurs where he scored 33.
Bad.
There's a little bit of security in somebody who's going to start with a bunch of players out. And, I guess we could pretty confidently say he scores high teens fantasy points. I'd rather roster Teo Maledon if I'm looking at value plays from OKC, though.
Yeah, Aaron Wiggins is a guy that on a not 12 game slate, like on a 6 or a 7 gamer, sitting sub 4K on FanDuel, having an opportunity to play more minutes, increased workload. Yeah, I would probably have some interest, but I just don't imagine that on a 12 game slate, you can't find the completely unknown pieces to kind of fit and fit with the puzzle. I just don't know how Aaron Wiggins putting up 25 is going to do anything for you tonight. It just doesn't make sense that he would be somebody to prioritize, especially when you get on FanDuel, you get the 3,500 there. You get Damian Jones on DK, where I think I'll play a little bit more of him. Definitely not going to try to make that a thing over on FanDuel. I'd be surprised if I got over 5% of him with the number of center options I want to play there. You've got Jonas Valanciunas, guys there that kind of make a little bit more sense at the position. But I don't want to be prioritizing an Aaron Wiggins if the field's already going to be getting there, just assuming that he's going to miraculously start putting up fantasy points now.
All right, we have a super chat from Dalton Henley Jr. It is by the way, these are two guys, way different price ranges to say the least. But he's saying for FanDuel single entry, who would you rather play at center, Jokic or Jones? That is Jokic for me. And I'm just looking at it in these terms. In the build I have right now, I have a lot more exposure to Jokic than I do to Jones over on FanDuel right now. It's just not all that difficult to spend up 11.5 for Jokic. Yep. And I haven't projected for so many fantasy points. So the answer is Jokic for me. Damian Jones obviously in a better spot because Domantas Sabonis has been suspended. But which way are you going here? If you were only playing one lineup in single entry, Jokic or Jones, who would you prioritize at center?
Jokic 100%. Here's let's fast forward to this, Greg. And I know we go position by position, but because it's a 12 gamer and there's certain plays that are just getting a lot of attention. We have Damian Jones projected for 28 minutes. I know he played 29 minutes in his last start. I know that he's kind of had a hard cap of 30 minutes. He hasn't played over 30 minutes in a game this season. And in 3 of his 4 starts, he's played exactly 29 minutes. He played 23 in the other one, ran into some early foul trouble. I get worried with Trey Lyles existing there. I mean, Marvin Bagley was there before, but Trey Lyles could actually play some 5 here and maybe guard Jokic. And I just get worried, like maybe it's not Alex Len that's going to just be a 1-for-1 swap there. Like I think he might need to compete with some Trey Lyles at the 5. If they go Metu at the 4 and Harrison Barnes, Metu, I'm just surprised that Metu's just kind of completely out of the rotation in Awesemo's projections. It's a little bit surprising to me. I feel as though like there's an opportunity. I don't think Damian Jones, he's going to be the most athletic big that they have and somebody who maybe can guard Jokic here a little bit, but I just don't find him to be a guy that I want in 50% of my lineups on DraftKings. Do you agree?
50% is a little high. I still view him as a very good value option, but not an over 50% guy. But he is in terms of overall value plays for me on DraftKings today. He is my second most rostered one in my build behind Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, Marvin Bagley is a smash. Oh, Anthony Edwards in. That sucks.
All right. So we have Anthony Edwards in, D'Angelo Russell in. I assume we're just going to find out all these guys are playing.
Beverly
right now.
out. Interesting.
Oh, okay. Never mind. And Vanderbilt out. All right. So we do have some news here to hit on. So we are Torian Prince is the only one we don't have news on. All right. Who gives a shit? What does Torian Prince matter all that much? Let's talk about the guys that we did just get information on. So Edwards in, Russell in, Beverly and Vanderbilt out. So in terms of the backcourt here, the high usage guys are still going to be there. Towns, Edwards, Russell, all going to be picking up a lot of usage. Do you see any value plays that stand out immediately with Beverly and Vanderbilt both being out?
The reason I said crap about Anthony Edwards is that he was projected for 20% and I loved him. He's 6,300 on FanDuel today. I don't know how you don't play a ton of him. I know that he's been bad of late. 32 minutes, 35.8 the last time he played. He hasn't shown up since February 28th. That's his last game. It's been nearly 10 days. I don't think he's going to be limited in any way. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy, 1.05 FanDuel points per minute on the season here. Yeah, Cat and Russell together, getting all three of them there. That's not the most ideal situation, but I'm sure I get to a little Russell, and Russell might see a little bit of an extra minutes bump with no Patrick Beverley there. Although McLaughlin, Jalen Noel have been guys who have been very serviceable. Noel, we just got word, is available to play as well. So I don't know. I think that Anthony Edwards is the guy that, especially if you get no Taurean Prince, so we'll be waiting on that news. He could be looking at 35 minutes right out of the gate here against a terrible, no good, very bad Oklahoma City team. I'm very nervous about how much I'm going to get to him on FanDuel now.
So let's read the tea leaves a little bit here, because Anthony Edwards has been banged up. He hasn't played this month yet. His last game was February 28th, and he had a really long stretch of games where he didn't play well. Right. Not only did not, I mean, he sucked. It was beyond not playing well, but I think we could attribute that to the knee injury. He'd been saying for a while his knee was bothering him. He was joking about it in the media. He was asked by a reporter, why are you not sitting out if your knee is bothering you so much? And he said, Karl Anthony Towns won't let me sit. He's making me play. And was that the truth? No, but that's kind of how Anthony Edwards deals with the media. But that aside, he was clearly hurt for an extended period of time. When he first got hurt was, I think it was February 15th. He had a game where he hurt his leg, missed the rest of the game, came back, played a few games, and was pretty bad in all of them. Fantasy points in the next 4 games. After that, 10, 23, 29, 34. Then they just sit him out for a couple of weeks. And now I think, just once again, reading the tea leaves of this situation, very winnable game against OKC. He hasn't played for a little while. I have to assume he would only be coming back if he felt totally healthy here. No other reason to play him in a winnable game against the Thunder. So I'm approaching this as if Edwards is totally 100% healthy, and he's grossly underpriced on FanDuel. I don't think you should be too worried about it.
We're going to roster a lot of Houston Rockets. No Christian Wood, no Jayshawn Tate.
All right, so let's hit on that next. And anything else you want to say on the Minnesota situation?
Yeah, kind of rounding it out. I mean, this is my team, and so it's the team I watch the most out of anybody outside of maybe the Clippers or Lakers, because I live here in LA, and it's always on late at night when kind of winding down, or when I'm recording with Ryan. It's just one of those things. I doubt that they're going to be limited. They are, for the first time in a long time, contenders in terms of just getting into the playoffs, in terms of like finding their way in there in a weaker West than we've seen in a while. It's very top heavy. Obviously, Phoenix is playing unbelievable. Getting Devin Booker back here, when they get Chris Paul back, that's still the team to beat in the West. But Minnesota, they've got some great pieces now, and Patrick Beverley's fit into the culture here well. I'm just thinking out loud that I don't think Russell and Edwards, that you're going to put them out there when you're 14-point favorites unless they're good to go. And as you said, Anthony Edwards did not look good. I think they were basically like, let's just wait until he feels better, wait until he's right, and now we'll fire him up. So I'm looking at him as a guy on FanDuel that's just impossible to get away from.
All right, so now this Houston Rockets situation. Christian Wood out, Jayshawn Tate out, Dennis Schroeder still questionable, game time decision. So we're not going to know his status for a little bit now. So this is, I think, the first place we have to start when we talk about the Houston Rockets. How much do you like Şengün now that Christian Wood is out, and he's going to start today? How high of a priority is Şengün going to be?
He is a massive priority. This guy immediately vaulted into, at 4,600 on FanDuel, I'm going to have 100% of him nearly. I find it impossible that I'm not. I'm putting him in at his given rates here. I mean, we just saw that start 30 minutes for him. 28 is the floor. I mean, there's no way. That's under the fantasy point per minute rate. He's a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy on the season. He won't have to share a floor with Christian Wood at any point. Not that he does very often, but having no Jayshawn Tate out there too, just massive. I mean, KJ Martin gets added to the fray here as well as a cheap piece of value that you can go to at 4K. We have KPJ, who's 5,800 on FanDuel, who already was grading out phenomenally well for me. Schroeder, if you get him out, that's going to just be another spot to just isolate. I mean, this Lakers-Houston game just looks bonkers now on FanDuel with a underpriced LeBron James, way underpriced, well, maybe not for his recent play, but maybe historically for Russell Westbrook. Just so many guys that you want to be playing from this spot now.
So Şengün, just pulling up his numbers right here, he has made 6 starts this season. It's been okay, not great from a fantasy perspective. 27 minutes per game, 28.5 fantasy points. still relative to his FanDuel and DraftKings price points, even if we only got that production, you would be pretty satisfied with that. And something else I'll add, a couple of those starts were alongside Christian Wood. A couple of the starts he also got into foul trouble. I don't think either of those is super likely in this spot against the Lakers. So Şengün, I think, immediately becomes one of the top value plays on the slate. And I know you said he's going to be nearly all your lineups on FanDuel, but let's also talk about him on DraftKings. And where I think that we should be comparing him to is how does he stack up for you against the likes of Marvin Bagley and Damian Jones? For me, I prefer him to both of those guys. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, power forward eligibility, yay. Having the opportunity to play him, I'm still going to play a lot of Bagley on DraftKings. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of Bagley still on DraftKings. Don't get me wrong, but Şengün is my favorite value, I think, on both sites in terms of, Brandon Williams is my favorite on FanDuel still, but Şengün, just a guy that I wish this news came out a little bit later because I think the field is going to get there still in a ridiculous way now. But at 5,100, maybe it gives some people pause. It does not give me pause whatsoever. As I said, against Miami, that is a tough, slower matchup here. You're getting the Lakers at home in a game where you're only 6-point dogs, and maybe that spread moves a little bit in the absence of Christian Wood, but nothing more than a point at most. So I don't know how you don't roster a ton of Şengün today. He's going to be probably my highest owned player on both sites outside of Brandon Williams on FanDuel.
I have absolutely no issue with that whatsoever. I'm on the same page as you. Now we have a super chat from Michael McKinney, who's asking us about these Houston Rockets. First part of the question, Kevin Porter Jr. or Josh Hart. And then second part of the question, Şengün or Marcus Morris over on FanDuel. So let's go. I think we could just pretty clearly say Şengün over Marcus Morris at this point, just based on what we just said.
Like not even on the same stratosphere.
All right, so that's the easy part. The second part, though, Kevin Porter Jr. or Josh Hart. Kevin Porter Jr., he's going to benefit now with all these players out for Houston, but at the same time, too, Simons and basically everybody is out for Portland. So that to me is a little bit of a closer one. Which way do you lean, Kevin Porter Jr. or Josh Hart?
KPJ. I know Josh Hart's been bad because his team's been very, very bad, but that's something you have to actually be factoring in. I can't remember the number of times I've seen 19 probably since Golden State in that the prime height of their powers, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, 2015, 2016. I can't remember a time I saw 19 in terms of a spread for an NBA game, but Portland certainly deserves it. I feel kind of bad for Josh Hart. You watch that Minnesota game and he just is uninvolved offensively. He's not really out there trying very hard. He's out there shooting deep threes, not even shooting that often, really letting Brandon Williams run around and do a lot of different things there, but they are so horrific. The last 4 games, let's see, this one, 37, they lost by to Golden State. They lost by 32 to Denver, lost by 30 to Phoenix, lost by 33 to Minnesota. I don't know how they keep it close against Utah in any way, shape, or form, and that means Josh Hart just has to be devalued because I don't see how he plays fourth quarter run.
Remember the days when, what was this, I guess a month ago now, Josh Hart was traded for CJ McCollum and people were like, the Blazers got the better end of that deal. It was a popular opinion at the time, but times have changed because CJ McCollum has been crushing for the Pelicans. He had a big game last night. I didn't play as much as in hindsight as I guess I probably should have, but at the same time, I prefer Darius Garland, and Garland had a big game also. So ultimately, it probably didn't matter all that much. But for today, you had referenced him before. He's going to be really popular. Current ownership projections. Let me refresh to see if we have a recent set with some of the, not quite yet, but either way, he's going to be popular. Currently, CJ McCollum projected for 35% ownership on DK. Over on FanDuel, coming in at 41%. Play CJ McCollum in cash games. I think that's more than reasonable. For tournaments, though, are you looking to be over or underweight to CJ McCollum?
I'm looking to still go a little bit over. This is kind of the one guy that I was referring to when I'm saying you can still isolate one or two guys. And for me, Giannis is unowned. So I think finding paths to him on FanDuel, specifically in some bigger tournaments, I think that's going to be something I want to do. LeBron's going to be extremely popular, rightfully so here. But I think CJ McCollum is kind of going in that boat for me, where at 8,600, I'm not trying to pivot off of Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to play a lot of them alongside each other. I'm just going to maybe play a little bit more Donovan Mitchell's, but CJ McCollum, he's at 40%, I guess now. I'm probably going to end up around that number. I'd be surprised actually if I got over that now that I just refreshed and saw that, because he was sitting around 36% for most of the day, 33% a little bit earlier. And, I found myself getting to around that 40% number quite a bit, but his circumstances are just so different. We talked about him a lot yesterday and why I loved him so much. He was 30% usage, 33% assist rate in this short limited sample. It's going up even further because of 10 assists in like just over 2 quarters of work yesterday. The guy is on a different stratosphere playing for this team. And Ryan, I just value so much of what Rimpack says, and I'm lucky I get to do the NBA Slate Starter podcast with him and talk every single night with him. But there's certain guys that he just has conviction that if they were in different circumstances, that they would smash. Şengün is one of them where he's like, I think this is a 10K player in the NBA if he played on Sacramento today and played 32, 34 minutes a night. Same thing about CJ McCollum. He's been saying this for about 4 or 5 years, where if he's in a different situation, not Damian Lillard or, just out of there in general, that he could be the man. And so New Orleans, as much as it's not a contender, and maybe a basketball purist wanted to see him on a contender at the trade deadline, he is showing out what he's capable of doing if he's the alpha.
Yeah, and he's had some massive games for New Orleans. And I mean, it's kind of weird to see his fantasy production considering the guys he's playing around, because his situation from a fantasy perspective, at least on paper, it seemed like it should have been better in Portland than what it is right now in New Orleans, because he was playing in Portland with no Damian Lillard, and then he comes to New Orleans and he's playing with Jonas Valanciunas, he's playing with Brandon Ingram, obviously not tonight because Ingram is out, but it's guys to share the ball with, guys that are going to take touches, but still maybe it's a motivation thing where he's playing with a team that is actually playing for something this year, where Portland kind of seemed to be tanking, but he's clearly found a home in New Orleans that's fitting him really well. By the way, we just got an ownership update. Alex had posted in the chat to refresh in 30 seconds. I listened to the boss man, refreshed, and lo and behold, new ownership right there. First thing that I want to point out here, updated ownership for Şengün. Currently on FanDuel, he is projected for 25.2% ownership. Not nearly enough in my opinion. Over on DraftKings, he is projected for 20.7. Also, not nearly enough, in my opinion, to seeing that number change anything with how you're approaching Şengün.
Just if it's going to be 25%, hit lock button. Like, it's not going to be 25%. I can't imagine the $44. He's not going to be 55, 60%. I know it's a 12-game slate, and I know that you don't want to speak in absolutes, but I absolutely believe 4,600 for him is just broken beyond broken in this circumstance. You have to remember, no Jae'Sean Tate as well. That's one extra perk. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, which he should be able to do. I doubt you see Dwight Howard start. Maybe he does here. We'll see how that ends up panning out in this spot. But I mean, Şengün should be able to have a lot of fun here today.
One other guard I want to ask you specifically about, just because he's so popular today. I want to make sure we hit on all of the popular options before we move on. SGA. 10-2 on DK, projected for 26.4% ownership now. Over on FanDuel, we've got SGA also really popular. 10-7 though, projected for 19.8% ownership. He's had a number of big games lately, which has been fueled by the amount of players that are out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't have an issue per se with SGA, but there's so many options to pay up for today that I find myself coming a little bit underweight to him in my current builds. Do you think that's an issue at all?
No. I will say, I think being on a back-to-back maybe helps a little bit, having to travel to Minnesota. I know he's a professional athlete, but he's not exactly on the best basketball team there ever was. Oklahoma City's 14-point dogs here. We just saw him overcome a massive spread and getting blown out there against Milwaukee, but I don't think that that's something that can be repetitive going forward here for him. I know if you look in 4 of his last 6, he's put up over 60. So I'm not saying that this guy is going to be a 1.22 FanDuel points per minute guy like he's been on this season. He's averaging well north of that here in the absence of Josh Giddey. And now there's no Trey Mann, and maybe they feel the need to have some of those minutes go his direction. But there's no way that Oklahoma City is going to want to go push him 40 minutes, I would think, in this spot if they're just being smart and following their template of what they're trying to do as an organization. So I currently have him in for 34 minutes. We have him projected at Awesemo for 34 and a half minutes. I mean, that's in lockstep. I just don't really want to be paying 10-7 for him when I can get to DeJounte Murray at 10-2, I've already talked about how Donovan Mitchell, 8,400, is just so good, because if they're going to blow Portland out of the water, he's going to be the guy who can offensively do whatever he wants against this team. So even in blowouts, which is kind of what you're anticipating here, a 121 total, he'll be a main culprit of why they do that. And then my guy, CJ McCollum, they're just such priorities, kind of a dead zone to be landing on Shea for me. So at 20%, if you wanted to take an overweight approach, sure, go ahead. But for me, you can't play everybody in the top tier. So I'm going a little bit under.
Yep. I think that is totally reasonable. It's the same page I'm on. I'm underweight to the field on him. It's not that I don't project him well. It's just there's so many guys to roster on this slate. And then also consider it in these terms. Luka on FanDuel, for instance, is 11,100. SGA is 10,700. And they have similar projected ownership. I have Luka as a way better fantasy producer than SGA. I get SGA has been great lately. He's not Luka. No. And that's kind of what I think the comparison point is. So I'm a little bit over on Luka, a little bit under on SGA. Totally comfortable with that. Some other news from right now. Vooch in. He is starting at center for the Bulls. Tristan Thompson returns to a bench role. So one value play we don't have to consider. That's nice because you don't want to get in the spot where there's too many value guys to consider, especially one of them is Tristan Thompson, doesn't know whether he's left or right-handed. Do you know about that? That he's
I did see that.
He's gone back and forth over his career shooting left and right-handed. Never a good sign. There's never a point where somebody's like, boy, things are going great. I'm going to start shooting with my opposite hand and then go back to the other hand.
You know who else has memorably changed hand shooting? Ben Simmons. So there's that. Ben Simmons goes back and forth.
I mean, he just doesn't shoot. So who's...
He doesn't play basketball.
He doesn't even play basketball. So it's like there's all kinds of things going on there. Super chat here from Greg Smith, and I think that's the only one outstanding right now. Super chat from Greg Smith. He's saying for a smaller field FanDuel single entry, his current lineup wants to know our thoughts on it. Fred VanVleet, Brandon Williams, CJ McCollum, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Kevin Porter Jr., Bagley, Şengün, Gobert. The only one of those guys that I'm not all that high on is Rudy Gobert. But
he's 7,700 on FanDuel, so it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I still there's other centers I'm getting to more exposure to than him. Like he's not somebody that's priority play for me. But if that's just the thing where you've built your lineup and it's 7,700, he comes in as the final piece that fits in. Totally fine. I don't have an issue with any of the players that are in that lineup, Greg. Do you feel differently? Anybody in there who you think is a bad option?
No, not a single one. I will say I would anticipate that somewhat chalky, but 600 to 700 field size, I'm just fine with that because I think Fred VanVleet, I think, is going to probably go a little bit overlooked for what he should be. That's kind of the last guy to talk about at guard. I think Q tags next to names still matter for the general public out there playing. So depending what tournaments you're in, 600 to 700, some of those smaller fields, it seems like the fields are paying more attention and maybe they'll land on a little bit more, but 7,300 is just too enticing not to be taking some shots there on FanDuel today.
We do have some questions in our premium Discord channel right now. First from B-Ball Man, aka Vucci Main. He's saying LeBron James is left-handed but shoots with his right hand. That's totally different than him deciding one day he was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to shoot left-handed. Now I'm going to shoot right-handed. So it's not about which is a player's predominant hand. It's that they've changed which hand they shoot with over the course of their NBA career. That's more the issue here that I'm talking about. There was one other question.
Phil Mickelson did the same thing. He's left-handed golfer. He's right-handed in real life.
Yeah, but once again, not a bit. You'd be concerned if all of a sudden he got up one day. He's like, you know what? I'm golfing right-handed now. You go, boy, maybe something's broken here.
Be bad.
Especially when his nickname is Lefty. We have a question in our Discord channel here from Jets World. Needs a player for 6K or less in the utility position for the 555 on DK. All right, let me go to my projections. 6,000 or less. All right, sort 6K or less on DK.
I appreciate everybody saying I am locked in today. I am locked in. 12 game slates. It's hard to not just be constantly paying attention to everything. There's no funny business today.
6K or less. So, I mean, the answers for me are Şengün and Bagley, but that's quite a bit lower. And I think there's probably a pretty good chance that you have those guys. The next highest projected player I have for 6K or less is John Collins. So I think we could use it. Do you have any other guard thoughts before we move on?
Jalen Green. Don't sleep on it if Schroeder's out. I do expect his usage to kind of just keep trending up here as we get towards the end of the season. They obviously spent a high pick on him. He's been disappointing, but we've seen 23.6, 27.4, 23% usage here. We've seen some decent upside games. I wouldn't be surprised. 5,700 on DK. He started the game off 4 for 4 against Miami. I was watching the beginning of that game. He started off really, really hot and tailed off at the end, finished 4 for 10 from 3, but he's going to find one of these spots to go up for 45, 50 here. Eric Gordon out there, not ideal because he seems to be playing a lot more minutes here, but I do expect mid 30s minutes here for him. So a really contrarian guard option if you want to take that shot with me.
Yeah. And as to answer the question we got from Jets World, for me, assuming you already have Şengün and Marvin Bagley in your lineups and you're not looking to leave a bunch of salary on the table, the answer for me is John Collins. Collins, I think we're going to start to see him play more extended minutes. And John Collins, the last couple of games now since coming back, he only played 25 minutes his first game back from injury. He was out about a month. I forget exactly what the injury was, but he missed a month, only played 25 minutes first game back. Last game comes back, plays 32 minutes in the start. Now they're playing against the Bucks. I expect a full allotment of minutes from John Collins. What is your answer, Eric? So he's looking for a utility player, 6K or under on DraftKings to fill out his lineup.
I mean, I said Jalen Green. If you're trying to get very, very off the board for a guy who's going to be 1% in like a,
I didn't realize that was your answer.
Well, that's what I was bringing up, but I also just was fixing all of my Houston projections and trying to go back and forth and get all the updates put into the sheet here. And I haven't projected 31 fantasy points. That's pretty freaking good. So 5,700 on different slates, he would be much more of a priority or something like on a 4 or 5 gamer. This is 12 games. That's getting really cute, but he's the closest to 6K. It's kind of a dead range that you're landing on because, as Greg said, Şengün's my favorite.
All right, guys, careful in the chat. I just saw Alex Baker calling Ben Simmons a nerd. What? None of that name calling around here. Get yourself booted out of chat. So careful. Watch yourself. Super chat from Luis Jose Lopez. Single entry thoughts. This is going to be complicated because he put in players' initials. RJ. So I'm assuming
there's a character limit, right? And that's what he was trying to avoid. He just kind of put the initials in.
No, because we've seen people write paragraphs as super chats.
So this is basically we want to test if you're paying attention and you know.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, RJ, I assume RJ Barrett is who I assume RJ is. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption, I think.
BW.
RJ, I mean, yeah.
Maybe
Kojo,
RJ Hampton?
Yeah. No, it might be RJ Hampton. I don't know. But BW is Brandon Williams. I can tell you that one.
Yeah. So, okay. Here's why I think he also didn't give us a site.
I think we can figure it out. So, I mean, with the D Jones at the end there, I'm assuming it's got to be FanDuel just because it's the center last one listed. And KP, so I'm assuming that's Kristaps Porzingis, and he's more applicable at 6K on FanDuel. So I cracked the code there. It's definitely FanDuel. But yeah, the BW, Brandon Williams, SGA, CJ, LeBron, Kevin Porter Jr., Şengün, Bagley, Jones, like all of that matches up. I don't know what RJ is. I don't know if I want to know what RJ is.
If it's FanDuel, because RJ Barrett is not point guard eligible on FanDuel, so it would have to be RJ Hampton. Hampton's very dependent on Jalen Suggs being out. So we did get news that, which we already knew this was going to be the case, but if Jalen Suggs doesn't play, RJ Hampton's going to start at point guard. But at least unless something just broke right now, we don't know whether Suggs is out or not. And if Suggs plays, I don't think we can consider RJ Hampton. So that's something to keep in mind. Yep. Brandon Williams, no issue there. SGA and CJ McCollum, no issue there. Kevin Porter Jr., no issue there. Şengün, no issue. Bagley, no issue. Damian Jones, no issue either. So just don't play RJ Hampton if Suggs is in.
It's Reggie Jackson. Look at that. Tyler Zander, I think. You figured it out, dude. Reggie Jackson.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. What a time to be alive.
All right. So if it's Reggie Jack, Lofty saying it could be Ronald Jones. Could it be Ronald Jones? I wouldn't.
It's never Ronald Jones, is what
in the regular season. It could be Ronald.
Fudge! No, I that guy is dead to me.
Okay. He
crushed
did
my best
Reggie
ball
Jackson.
spirits. It's fine.
It is Reggie Jackson. Yeah, I don't have issues with any of those guys either. Now that we know it's Reggie Jackson.
Yeah,
I jumped to RJ Hampton.
Yeah, he's fine. He's gonna bounce back today. 20% of him.
All good.
So, yeah.
Another super chat from Sir Ruin of House Roundhead. Thanks for the advice, guys. I am a UMBC alumni, first 16 seed to beat a 1 seed. I'm about to go to their game now. Hope they make the tournament again. All right. Appreciate the super chat. I was gearing up. I was like, "Whoa, this is a big," because I didn't read the question ahead of time. I was like, "This is going to be some interesting." I was trying to think. I'm like, which players in the NBA went to UMBC, but not a question though. Sir Ruin of House Roundhead. Enjoy the game tonight, and yeah, clarification that it is Reggie Jackson there. So all good there. I think that lineup is just fine with me. Luis Jose Lopez. So let's hit
Lindy
on the
Waters starting. By the way, what planet are we on where Lindy Waters III is starting in a professional basketball game?
So this is going to take Teo Maledon out of consideration for me. Lindy Waters. Are you considering Lindy Waters? If we kind of have to hit on the forwards also. It's hard to cover everything on the 12 game slate. But Lindy Waters, any consideration for you?
I mean, it's my namesake. Sentimentally, I want to try to take a shot, but I can't. Lindy,
That's
come
true.
on now.
All right, let's see. Lindy Waters. What are his rates?
Not good.
Lindy Waters. I have never considered him once this entire season.
Me either.
So it's not somebody whose information was at the tip of my tongue here. 14 minutes per game, 9 fantasy points. So just base rate, if we were to give him 26 minutes, which is probably about fair, we'd still be looking at less than 20 fantasy points. And then the matchup is not quite ideal against. Yeah, I don't think we need to consider Lindy Waters on a 12 game slate.
No, we do not.
So let's try to hit on the forwards here somewhat quickly, Eric. Who are the highest priority forwards for you today? I know some of them we've kind of hit on in passing with it, Marvin Bagley, Şengün at this point. So who are the players that we've not yet talked about that are high priority forward plays?
Yeah, LeBron James at 10-4 on FanDuel seems pretty good to roster against Houston. I don't know about you, but I think that seems like a pretty good spot to land. With Brandon Williams' existence on FanDuel, I think one of the builds you just have to be looking at immediately is going down at guard. And then, of course, Şengün's going to be almost, I have 90% of him on FanDuel. So that's going to be enjoyable to experience. But Giannis is up there at 11-9. I think I have access to him and Jokic. As I said, I'm not going to be taking the Damian Jones route. And now I'm probably going to be taking less of the Karl Anthony Towns route, just simply because you get Russell and Anthony Edwards. That is a lot different than having Patrick Beverley out on the floor with you and Jared Vanderbilt out on the floor with you. So I think I'm going to be downgrading him a little bit just because they're at the exact same ownership, him and Jokic. So that's talking just about some of these spend ups, but you have money to be spending. I'm surprised that a 9,800 Jason Tatum isn't garnering a little bit more attention against Charlotte. He's at 10.7%. Now, part of that is you can't play everybody. And, the field is saying LeBron James highlighter, and they should be. But Jason Tatum, we saw what he did against Brooklyn. We've seen what he's done in some of these spots, sub 10K. I want to get to more than 10% of him. I've got 24% of him as it stands right now. I think that's a guy that just makes a lot of sense to land on as well. You kind of run into this mid-range that I'm not finding a whole lot else. You can play Kevin Porter Jr. at small forward over on FanDuel. So that's a guy that I'm getting to a lot at that position. I'm definitely not going to be playing him at any of the guard spots and wasting one of my guard spots on him there, but fits in very, very nicely at small forward over there.
Josh Primo just ruled out. That's not going to have too much of an impact. This is a very, very important question because we can never make it through the show without trolling Eric, at least a little bit. Super chat from Green Checkmark. Do you prefer 1 checkmark or 3 green check marks? Thanks in advance. Which is more of a lock, Eric? 1 green check mark or 3? All right. I think 3. All right. I'm going to take that as a 3. Either that or he was doing some sort of read between the lines type of thing. Whatever it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was locked in and now you broke it. You broke it, green check mark. It's fine.
Another super chat from Goody. Pretty tough to get to LeBron and Jokic while feeling good about it. Which one do you prefer? DKGPP, Jokic for me. I love Jokic. Always.
Yeah, play multiple sites. I'm playing multiple sites, and that gives me access to be able to get to a little bit of both of them and not have it be something that's egregious. On FanDuel, LeBron is 10-4. He's 10-4. That is really hard to not be firing up. But when you talk about LeBron on DraftKings, you have to talk about him where you're only playing 8 players, and he has to compete with the likes of Jokic, Doncic, Giannis, DeJounte Murray, Karl Anthony Towns, Jason Tatum, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 10-2, Julius Randle. Well, not Julius Randle. He's not going to beat him there. But all of those other guys I mentioned, those are guys that at 11-6, LeBron has to be beating straight up pretty much. And I just prefer Jokic. I project him for 4.5 more fantasy points. and you're getting him at sub 10% because everybody's rostering Damian Jones except for me over on DraftKings. So I'm just a little bit lower on him than everybody else is, and therefore I'm just going to find Jokic in more lineups.
I'm going to give out a low-owned play that I think has a lot of upside that's totally being slept on today. And is a really, really good pivot off of Damian Jones, in my opinion. Trey Lyles.
That's the guy. I talked about that. I love Trey Lyles today.
Yeah, so Trey Lyles, do you remember the start he had, the first start with the Kings, when he started alongside Sabonis and just went crazy?
Oh, before we got royally shafted the next start? Yeah, I remember that one.
But he was also chalk that game, so whatever. But the time before, we got him for almost no ownership, and he went nuts. He's projected for less than 1% ownership on FanDuel today, 6% on DK. That's the pivot off of Damian Jones. I don't know how the Kings front court minutes are going to shape up, but I don't have Trey Lyles projected all that differently than Damian Jones. He's benefiting from the same situation with Sabonis suspended. So I think Trey Lyles makes a whole lot of sense there as well. Any other forwards you want to talk about here, Eric? If not, we got to catch up on some questions.
Pascal Siakam, 8,300 on FanDuel. Really hard not to like that number. I know he gets Fred VanVleet back, but apparently he couldn't have any upside with Fred VanVleet out. So maybe having him back will somehow find a path there. I would find that actually just ironic and funny. You have to talk about Drew Eubanks and Trendon Wofford over on FanDuel, 4K and 4,100 respectively. I am not going to get over 20% of either of them. I just think with Şengün's existence, I look at Şengün as on a different stratosphere as them. Find the $500, $600 and just play more of him, regardless of what you think that ownership is going to turn out at. We have him at Awesemo projected 33.17 as opposed to 27.5 here, 25.5 here, going up against Gobert. Not the best offensive spot here if you're a front court member of the Portland Trail Blazers.
Super chat from For Testing. You two are the best, but which is the best here, Marvin Bagley or Olynyk? I prefer Bagley personally. What are you doing? Bagley, Olynyk, what's your preference?
It's not close. For me, I get Olynyk. 4,300 on FanDuel. We can start to try to get different. He would have been more intriguing if there was no Şengün, but now with Şengün at power forward, I'm just finding it impossible to get off of that. If you had Watford, Eubanks, and Olynyk around that same range with Olynyk at 4,300, we could start to figure it out. But Bagley's just the priority on both now because there's just not enough upside here with Olynyk.
Follow-up question from Jets World. For his utility spot, he's choosing between Collins, Monk, or Brandon Williams. I prefer Collins than most of those three. Brandon Williams is going to be really popular. He's also $500 less than John Collins. But I'm concerned about the matchup for starters. Number two, there's such a big difference between Brandon Williams on FanDuel and DK. Because FanDuel, you could play him 100% of your lineups. I would have no issue with that whatsoever. On DK, I still think while he's a good play, I think he's going over owned at 5,500. I would rather play John Collins, all things considered. So utility spot, Collins or Williams for you, or Malik Monk because he's also in the picture.
Collins or Williams. God, it's brutal. I'm going to probably go with you. I'll go with Collins just because I do not expect 48, 49 or whatever. His rebounding rate is not going to be what we just saw that last game. I would be surprised if that was really the case going forward. So John Collins, I think it's just the more proven commodity, and Brandon Williams, play him on FanDuel. I'm probably going to be shying away on DK.
Demetrius Johnson saying the pivot for tonight is Boogie because Jokic might sit. No, he won't. He's not on the injury report. Jokic is playing.
No, he's not.
Yeah. Now watch him trip and fall getting off the team bus.
He did get ruled out after lock of that one, and I just said play 100% Boogie because they signed Boogie to a contract, and it just that was the read the tea leaves situation. And I should have binked everything if Will Barton had a pulse. Will Barton did not have a pulse that game. That was so tilting.
Yeah, either way, I don't think it's not reasonable to think Jokic is going to sit tonight, in my opinion. No, I like getting to Jokic today. Reading some more of these questions here from Jeremiah in our Discord channel. With LeBron possibly starting at center for the Lakers, would a pivot to KJ Martin off Şengün be a play? I don't really think that there's relevance there.
That's a non sequitur is what that is. Those are two unrelated things that don't matter.
Yeah. Play Şengün. I don't really care that LeBron probably starts at center. Shouldn't make a difference. Let's see. I think we're caught. Here from 0246 3-1 in our Discord channel. What is it? This guy's username is
watching Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
00000011111.
It's actually my debit card pin here. But can I? It's the exact one. Can I lock Şengün on both sides tonight, or am I crazy? I wouldn't have an issue with that.
I wouldn't have an issue. I have 90% on FanDuel, so take that for what you will.
And all right, I think we're all caught up here. So as for forwards, let me just check here really quick to see if there's anything important that we've missed out on. Caleb Martin, I think, is a really good play at 4K over on DraftKings with Jimmy Butler out. I think there's a pretty good chance that Caleb Martin moves into the starting lineup at the very least, going to play extended minutes in this spot. So I like getting to Caleb Martin at 3,900. Sorry, I said 4K.
So we've forgiven.
Yeah, thank you. We're all prone to make mistakes. I know I make less of them than most, but Caleb Martin, one other guy that we haven't talked about yet, that's a really high priority play for me at 3,900. Should see an extended role without Jimmy Butler there. So another guy. Anything else for you at forward? If not, we'll hit on center real quick.
Sorry, did we get him starting? Did we get news on that starting lineup at all? Because again, I'm just updating stuff constantly.
Let's see. The Heat starting lineup has not come out yet.
Okay. Just wanted to ask.
I'm assuming the starting lineup is Lowry, Robinson, Martin, Tucker, Adebayo.
That's what I'm assuming too, but I just wanted to get that double check because I'm not going to play him on FanDuel at 4,700, but I'm finishing up my DK stuff here and he would be much more intriguing there.
Super chat from JR. KJ Martin, Karl Anthony Towns, Trenton Watford, or Siakam, Porter, Damian Jones. Of those combinations, I prefer Siakam, Porter, and Damian Jones.
Yeah, I do too, even though, again, Damian Jones, I've been a Damian Jones guy in a lot of spots, usually when he's like 1% on a late slate. This is not that. This is tough for me to want to stomach 50% of a guy on a 12-game slate where there's a lot of other places, especially upside at his position. He would have to put up 30, 35 for me to really feel bad about the fade.
All right, everybody knows about my affinity for Nikola Jokic. It basically any slate with Nikola Jokic, he's my preferred pay-up option. Today is no different. Eric, you haven't really weighed in on Jokic for yourself as of late, though. Is he also a high-priority spend-up option for you? Because for me, if I have the space at center, I'm paying up for Jokic.
Yeah, he's a smash. He's the best fantasy point per minute player outside of Giannis here on this slate. On this season, 1.84. That makes him the best for the season. You still have no MPJ, no Jamal Murray. You have a possibility of no Will Barton. Everything just makes sense for me to play a lot of Jokic and not really think about it. He's one of the more easy set it and forget it kind of things. Gets this Damian Jones spot. And I also got to say, if he smashes, there's a really good chance that he's not like Damian Jones might get in foul trouble. A lot of paths here. As you said, he's on a tirade right after everybody's like, oh, well, he's only put up 51 his last 3 or whatever it was that they were doing. Don't worry about that shit. Just play Jokic.
Yep. We are on the same page there. Another super chat from Gary. Nice one, Gary. LaMelo or Fred VanVleet on FanDuel, considering fading the 7 p.m. games. I prefer Fred VanVleet to LaMelo today. How about you?
I prefer him too, which is so weird to say. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, it's been good having James Bouknight out, and you would think that there'd be some extra minutes here. They ended up getting blown out. He was out for like this weird 2-minute span as I was watching that game yesterday, and then came back with like 3.5 minutes, but it wasn't really competitive at that point. I'm just worried. There's times when Rozier is just going to take over ball games. And I know over on Odd Shopper, the under on 21.5 is a really good prop to be looking at for Terry Rozier. That'll kind of bounce us into the prize pick section here for the next half hour. But LaMelo Ball, I think he's going to get back to that 1.2, 1.3 FanDuel point per minute guy that we've seen over the last year and a half. I just don't really know what's going on here at the moment. And I'm more inclined to take shots on Fred VanVleet if it's going to be comparable.
Yep, we're on the same page there, both answering Fred VanVleet. As for other centers, just a few minutes left, so I'm just going to rattle off a couple of guys here. Bam Adebayo, I think he makes sense without Jimmy Butler. You look at his numbers this year when Butler's off the court, just massive usage in fantasy production from Bam Adebayo in some of those games. So I like getting to him. Something else I'll add, I think pretty good chance that Bam Adebayo ends up winning Defensive Player of the Year at this point, with the Heat seemingly locking up their spot near the top of the Eastern Conference. They get that 1 seed. I think Bam's going to end up winning Defensive Player of the Year. Another guy, Valanciunas. I know that he disappointed last night in a very, very big way with Brandon Ingram out, but the game was a blowout. He only played 20 minutes. Basically, all of the production that game went to CJ McCollum. we still saw a 29% usage rate for Valanciunas. It was just really weird. He wasn't efficient from the floor. He didn't get rebounds. He only had 2 boards yesterday. I'm actually fairly encouraged that we saw a 29% usage rate for him. So Valanciunas without Brandon Ingram in there, how do you view him at the center spot? Because I think that he's a pretty good lower owned option as well.
Yeah, I thought he was sneaky yesterday. We talked a lot about that game and that spot yesterday. McCollum, I think you've seen the light there, which is nice. But I don't know. Jonas Valanciunas is definitely going to be the direct beneficiary. I think he's probably sneaky here. Devontae Graham is getting a lot of traction. The other guys, I'm like last second updating it. Why in the world are we getting so much? I mean, we're getting so much. Corey Joseph, Garrison Matthews. There's a lot of riffraff that's getting a lot of traction here on the slate at the moment. I'm just trying to update everything to final it out. I prefer getting to more Jonas Valanciunas. Any of these centers just paying up and being contrarian to go up and get them as opposed to playing Damian Jones is going to be the way I go. So if you land on him instead of Damian, I kind of like those type of builds a little bit more today.
Yeah, there are some kind of odd players that have become popular, and I think they made sense earlier in the day when there just weren't that many players to get to. But at this point, now that we've got Şengün that's opened up and some other value plays, I don't really see a need to get to guys like you just mentioned, like a Corey Joseph. So, or Aaron Wiggins for that matter. So a lot of players that I think are not all that necessary that are picking up some ownership today. About a minute to go into lock. Guys, do not go anywhere. Stick around. Eric and I are going to be talking about prize picks for the next 30 minutes. But right before we do, real quick, Eric, is there anything at all on this slate that we have not yet talked about that you want to give to the people before we hit lock?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've just been updating so much of this Houston stuff, trying to get it exactly the way that I want. And Şengün's like a formality. He's up to 50% on FanDuel. That was more of what I was expecting that first run. Yeah. KJ Martin, I think he's a decent play, but everybody keeps bringing him up in chat. And I just get worried that he might be the guy who gets steamed up to a place where you're a little bit uncomfortable. Just don't sleep on a 3,500 Eric Gordon on FanDuel. I think that's kind of a guy that at 10%, I'm getting to around 16%, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm getting to a little bit more Jalen Green than the field is on 5,700. He's pretty easy to get over the field on DraftKings, but on FanDuel as well. I just think there might be some extra upside for him as well. With as much LeBron and Russell Westbrook on FanDuel, which is just gross, as I've got, I think there's an opportunity to kind of have that game just be a shootout and really kind of take you to the top.
We just got a Bulls starting lineup. No Martin in the starting lineup. Gabe Vincent starting. And I just really want to quickly get that's such a weird starting line for me for this reason. They get Oladipo back last game. Vincent was basically a DNP coach's decision. He played the last 2 minutes of garbage time, but other than that, he did not play the entire game. So he goes out of the rotation to starting. Late news here. Do you see any value in pivoting to him? Because people are just not going to be on him.
He's inflated a little bit because he's been starting. Again, I'm just waiting for everything to refresh here as I'm getting everything situated. I mean, he's 4,500, so it's starting to come back down from the what? He's 4,900, 4,800. He's 45 now. I thought there was a chance that he could end up starting. I just was asking because I didn't see that Caleb Martin was officially there. He's just getting back. Victor Oladipo, I think they're probably going to have him staggered, get him on the floor maybe without Bam or some of these other playmakers, get him on with Tyler Hero. It's just such a weird, you're right. It is not prototypical, but it's not super surprising. Spo kind of knows what he's doing. So I trust it a little bit more than just about any other coach in the NBA. What is his number on FanDuel? 4,600. I don't really find him to be necessary on this slate.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessary. I liked Caleb Martin a lot before. Does this change? Yeah. I still like Caleb Martin. I won't even say it's a mistake because we had this the other day. I'm pretty sure I was doing the show I might have been doing it with Josh, actually. It might have been a Monday where we were really high on Caleb Martin and we thought he was going to be starting for the Heat. He ended up coming off the bench. I was still overweight to him, but I went from playing him in 50% of lineups to 30% or something. He still ended up crushing coming off the bench. It was the night where Yurtseven started as opposed to Martin. I'm not too concerned that Martin's coming off the bench. I still think the minutes are going to get there, and I think he's worth rostering. Do you feel the same way, or does Vincent starting kind of scare you off Martin?
Well, I mean, he played 37 minutes. He played really, really well. I have to see who else was in that game here because that was kind of wonky. We just got THT out. That's not something we were necessarily expecting, was that? No,
he was listed as probable.
Probable, yeah. So that came out of nowhere. I was going to say I did not anticipate that here, but looking at that game, what was the date on it here? Because there had to be somebody else that was out for that one. He ended up playing 37 minutes against Brooklyn. He's been playing 20, 25. That's kind of where he's been at. Max Strus still exists. Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin. I'm probably not going to play him. I'm probably going to write him off at this point. It's too big of a slate. He's 3,900, and can he go out and get hot in the absence of Jimmy Butler? Absolutely. But I can make that case for so many other people. And considering he was just kind of not popular, he was 8%. I still think he probably ends up around 4 or 5% on this slate, which I think is too high for him at 3,900.
Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, which Eric and I are going to be talking about for the next 25 minutes. If you guys are signing up for Prize Picks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit, and get yourself 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, a really useful tool to help building out your Prize Pick cards. Use OddShopper, free tool over at Awesemo.com. We've got, using our NBA projections, this will show you projected win percentage, projected ROI on, pretty much every single prop bet out there. Recently added steals, blocks, threes. So we've got pretty much everything covered there. We are going to be discussing that for a little bit, but also we're going to have to be hitting on the news for the rest of the slate as we go along as well. If you guys have not done so already, do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate it very much. Super chat here from Uzi Azazov. Edwards and DeJounte Murray or Shai and Kevin Porter Jr. So he's asking Edwards and DeJounte Murray or SGA and KPJ. Which side do you prefer?
I like everybody in that equation. I think Shai's going a little bit overowned on FanDuel relative to what I want to be paying for him. So I'll probably go with the Edwards DeJounte just kind of as a default. DeJounte, I mean, it's like people forgot about Dre. You can't forget about Dre. This guy's insane. He's 10-2. And he's getting 7% less rostership of Shai. That seems a little recency biasy to me. DeJounte Murray's still in a circumstance without Derek White here, been very consistent and excellent himself. So at 500 less, I don't really need the savings here anymore, especially Brandon Williams over on FanDuel, but and Şengün at 4,600 that I just have fired up at will. But I probably will go towards the first one, Edwards DeJounte.
Yeah, same. Especially because it's FanDuel. We talked about Edwards at the top. He's so drastically underpriced on FanDuel that I think that's where we want to be going on FanDuel is with Anthony Edwards. And just to read into some of the narratives that we talked about at the top of the show, Edwards has missed time. He sucked before he got hurt, before he missed games, but he was playing hurt. The fact they're bringing him back in this game against OKC, I do not think they would be doing that unless he was 100%. So the fact that he's playing in a game that they would almost certainly win easily without Anthony Edwards, I think that's a good indication he's healthy. So I don't have too many concerns with Anthony Edwards. Let's talk about the Taylor Horton-Tucker news real quick before we talk about some of the Prize Picks props. Is there anybody you see really standing out here with Taylor Horton-Tucker not playing? He's somebody who usually plays mid-20s minutes. It's a favorable matchup for the Lakers against Houston. We weren't playing THT, but does this open up anybody else as a consideration?
I mean, Malik Monk is hiked up to 6K. I believe he's 5,700 over on DK, but he's been playing a lot of minutes. And I think this really secures him for like 33. We haven't projected at 31, 33, 34 minutes, I think is kind of there. Maybe kind of a low owned dart, but if it does anything for me, it establishes that Russell Westbrook is a guy that on FanDuel, this is like tale as old as time. How many times can I get burned by this guy playing him? He's 6,800 there. Obviously, there's LeBron there now, which tempers that off a little bit. It's not like an all-in play like he might have been last slate, as gross as that was. But, for me, Austin Reeves was already allotted for 26 minutes. I don't really see that changing. DJ Augustine's played really well in relief duty as well. Where did those minutes go? Because I know he's been playing a lot more here.
DJ Augustine, you mean?
Yeah, DJ Augustine.
Yeah, so DJ Augustine's minutes in the last few games. And also, I'm not sure how much he's going to be impacted by THT either. Maybe plays a couple extra minutes, but it's not as if they play the same position. But last 3 games, 22, 19, and 19 minutes for DJ Augustine. Which are also, by the way, his only 3 games with the Lakers. Yeah,
so for me, Malik Monk gets a little bit more secure, but at 6K, that's so hard to land on this slate. Maybe you get to like 4 or 5% of this guy out of like 150, but it's not like I'm running to the window to try to cash all my Malik Monk shares or something. It's just not going to happen here. I don't really see there anybody. There's so many other guys too. Kent Bazemore can come off the bench and randomly play some minutes. We saw him play 17, 20 minutes here in some spots. He's kind of like the relief duty guy if there's going to be no THT. So I don't want to overvalue it as much. I'm giving 2 more minutes to Malik Monk. I'm giving like a minute more to Russell Westbrook. LeBron's not going to change. Stanley Johnson might get a minute or 2, but that's not really relevant on this slate.
It is. I'm just kind of looking at the Lakers rotations right now and the positions of everybody. I think that Carmelo Anthony goes from a fringe type play to a fairly strong value option now. The Lakers are so thin on depth, and Melo shoots when he's out on the court. I think there's a path for Melo to play over 30 minutes without THT out there. And I mean, it's not unreasonable to think he'd be second on the Lakers in usage today. Last couple of games as is, he played 30 minutes last game with a 25% usage rate. I legitimately like Carmelo now. I think he's a strong option.
I do not hate that. I'm going through it a little bit, and 5,100 on FanDuel. What is that number over here? I mean, he's a guy that can kind of be in play as a flamethrower anytime that he's sub 6K. Like if you think that he can get a spike in minutes, obviously this gives him a better opportunity for that. He can certainly get there. I get worried with LeBron being back that I'm not going to get carried away with him by any means. I mean, he's 5,300 on DK. On FanDuel, it looked like 5,100. I actually had one share of him, which is surprising to me. I didn't think I would get to any of him. And that was before this news. So maybe I do get to a little bit more.
Super chat from Carlos, Manzo, Eric, and Greg. You guys take the prize for best live before lock duo.
Stop it.
Listen. First of all, you're right. Second of all, it's not a competition, but you're correct. Another super chat from Uzi Azazov. Sorry. Another question, guys. No need to apologize. All good. We appreciate every question here. DeJounte and Siakam or Jokic and Reggie Jackson on FanDuel. Well, that's another one. I really like all the combinations. Do you have a lean there?
Jokic
DeJounte,
and Reggie Jackson.
Siakam, Jokic, Reggie Jackson.
I mean, I can only tell you how my lineups look, and my lineups look a lot more towards the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I like all 4 of those players.
I do too.
And for me personally, if Jokic is in a question, unless there's some crazy, opportunity cost that you're making where you're playing some terrible value play to get to Jokic, then I'd go against him. If the question is Jokic in it, I'm probably answering Jokic. So that is where I stand right there. Let's head on over to Prize Picks now, Eric. It was hard. We tried to get to as much as we could today. 12-game slates. They're few and far between, but especially today with all the injury news that came out. And by the way, still injury news likely to come because the players that are still on the injury report are, and you can pull up Odd Shopper, Eric, and then we'll start talking about some of the Prize Pick stuff. Here are the players still on the injury report: Mitchell Robinson, Will Barton, Dennis Schroeder. They're all questionable to play. They're going to be pretty significant. Bones Highland is questionable. Jeremy Lamb is questionable. Taurean Prince is questionable. Those guys are a little bit less important. So I'm going over to Prize Picks. Eric is pulling up Odd Shopper. Odd Shopper, free tool to use, really useful for finding the best value on props out there, really anywhere. Free tool based on our NBA projections, expected ROI, expected win rate on all prop numbers, and also Prize Picks. If you're signing up, use that promo code Awesemo, free month of Awesemo plus Platinum. Also get yourself up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. But now, Eric, if we were playing on Prize Picks, what are some of the top props that we're going to look to take overs or unders on based on our projections in Odd Shopper?
Yeah, it's looking to me. I mean, this game hasn't started yet. Corey Joseph was listed with 7 points. I'm not rostering a bunch of him. He was 3,500, I guess, on the FanDuel slate. I think we can still. Nope, that just came off the board.
Yeah, it's closed.
Dang it. So I was watching that one live as it was going away. That is sad times. So we lost all the Charlotte ones as well. Cade Cunningham are gone. All of these Charlotte, Detroit ones, because that was kind of a game that that was really kind of standing out. Or Boston and Charlotte, and then Chicago and Detroit. Both of those had a lot of great Prize Picks option. I fired a couple because that tends to be a lot of fun. But as it stands right now, let me kind of look at this next wave of games here, because I know I've got some plays, and I know Odd Shopper's got some plays here. We're looking at, I don't want to play Devin Booker. That's like even money on it. So always sort by best projected win percentage when you're doing Odd Shopper over there if you're going to be playing over on Prize Picks, simply because we don't care about the sports books. We don't care about what the expected ROI is. We just want the bets that are going to be winning the absolute most. Looks like Cameron Payne, 64% win percentage on the under of 7.5 assists. What's his assist line at for this game?
For Kevin Porter Jr. side?
No, Cameron Payne. It's not even listed.
Nope. Yeah, I misheard you. All right. So
you're okay.
Payne,
Devin Booker,
not listed.
we've got him at, what is that? Over a 4.5, but now it's up to 5.5, I think was the number that I had seen earlier. So that's a stay away. They do a really good job of adjusting here. You want to take advantage of the news in the moment here as it's happening, because there are definitely some lines to take advantage of here today. I played it Mbappe, no goals. And of course, he ends up scoring the only goal for Paris Saint-Germain today.
Yeah, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Talking about soccer, of course, football, if you will. Champions
There's
League.
no point to what you're saying. You lost a bet. That's the only reason.
I did lose a bet. That's what I was saying, though. But I'm saying the comparison is that it was plus 170 for him to score in any time score around the entire industry, around any sports book. But it's a flat line. It was 0.5 goals over on Prize Picks. So I don't care what the plus, what the juice is. I want it to be as negatively juiced as possible. More than likely, I want the minus 180s, the minus 200s on my card here. So we're trying to pinpoint those. I don't want to be involved in coin flips on Prize Picks.
We have another super chat here from Michael Pizzulli. Then we'll find some more Prize Picks props that we like. Hey, fellas, already have Şengün, Watford, Lyles, or somebody else at power forward on FanDuel for 4,400 or less. So 4,400 or less, who is our favorite play power forward on FanDuel?
I will pull that up here.
I'm pretty sure my answer is Trey Lyles, by the way.
Let me find it here. I have Trey Lyles for 26. Yeah, I'm going to go Trey Lyles, 4,400. Again, Lyles. I'm trying to get away from those Portland guys. I know they have to play minutes. I know, but they're just so popular every single slate. And a lot of the time, you're not going to get a lot of fourth quarter run out of these starters, Eubanks and Watford, because they're just going to get eviscerated by Utah.
Yep. I think that's a more than fair way to look at it. And then, in terms of garbage time in that game, who knows who who are the garbage time players for the Blazers? Because they only have other than Josh Hart, they only have garbage time players. We've gotten to a point where everybody's like, "Oh, we have to play Brandon Williams," which is more than reasonable for DFS. But when Brandon Williams is the go-to guy on this offense, it's all trash. It's all garbage time. So I think that it's more than reasonable to be afraid of a blowout there. We have another question in our Discord channel here from JEW. DK single entry. Has there been any word on minutes for Booker, or is he a sneaky GPP option? Could take lots of shots. So also we had some people asking us, or you had brought up Cameron Payne before. It's with Booker in the mix. It's a massive downgrade for Cameron Payne. As for Booker today, I haven't seen anything about a minutes restriction. At the same time, I'm not all that interested in getting to him just because, he's already priced fairly significantly at 8,800. I do think that it's not that he's unplayable. There's just other guys I prefer to pay up for. But Booker, was he a priority or somebody you got to at all today as a low-owned option?
Not really. I expected that I would, because inherently you think, oh, well, he's back and there's really nobody else there. But it's going to be a fun game to watch. I just don't really want to be picking on Miami with too much here. Plus Cameron Payne, he's going to exist. I'm more inclined. I actually have a couple shares of Cameron Payne over on FanDuel at 6,800, and I still don't have Booker. Booker's just inflated to such a ridiculous number there at 10-1. It's really hard for me to land on him there.
We did get a Magic starting lineup. Jalen Suggs is in. He is starting. So RJ Hampton totally out of the mix today. No reason to consider him. Pretty much what we expected there. If Suggs is going to be in, we don't have to change anything. All good. The least amount of changes we have to make on a 12-game slate, the better, in my opinion. Let's get back to Prize Picks now. I think we finally got a little break in the action. Yes. I think we could finally find some stuff we like on Prize Picks. Eric, what stands out on Odd Shopper as good players to be targeting on Prize Picks now?
Oof. So we got a number of spots that we can kind of fire up here. I'm kind of wanting to fire up on LeBron James over 6 assists here now. This is something I'm kind of factoring in. THT, obviously, he's going to be playing a lot of point LeBron here going forward. And I want to match it up here with Odd Shopper to kind of see where we're at here. LeBron James, clicking on him. He's one of the top plays on the slate. I don't think anybody's denying that. It's now 6.2. It was 5.5 over on Odd Shopper earlier. So, I mean, the over was a 59% expected win percentage. At 6, a little bit tougher, but I think even just having THT out, I added actually a couple minutes to LeBron too as well. Just could be a spot where this game stays pretty competitive over what we would all expect it to. The line's actually moved to 7, so in the absence of Christian Wood, but LeBron James, I just expect him to go completely nuts here in the last week or so. Whether or not that's going to result in wins, I don't know, but I know it'll result in fantasy points and stats. I think the assist prop might be the only one to really target for him.
That's going to be a pass for me. I'm right around the projection of 6 assists for him. And also, I mean, you look at his games, he only averages 6.2 assists per game this year. You know why? None of his teammates can make shots. Hard to rack up assists when your teammates all suck and can't score. One of the other reasons also LeBron's usage has been so high lately. The other issue too is you just look at the trends for his assists. Here are his most recent games: 3, 5, 4, 3, 3, 6, 8. You have to go back. So you have to go back to a game against the Golden State Warriors on February 12th, nearly a month since LeBron had over 6 assists. With that in mind, I can't play over 6.
I was just trying to find things based on some of the news as I was updating, and I thought that one, just kind of off the top of my head, looked like, I said I wanted to double check because it was at 5.5 was the line that existed elsewhere for it. And so with it up to 6, that's definitely going to be a pass for me as well.
And it's not to say I like the under. I just think it's an efficient line. So not something I'd be looking at, but we'll keep digging. We'll find some props we like here. What's looking nice on Odd Shopper? What's looking nice?
I mean, there was just so much to update here with Houston. Now you got Jalen Green up to 28 fantasy points, Eric Gordon to 19, Kevin Porter Jr. 33. Looking at some of the fantasy score stuff. So it's not just props that you're looking at here. If you want to take the DFS projections we have at Awesemo as well and put them directly to work over on Odd Shopper, I think that's always a really nice way to do it too. That's what I'm kind of trying to isolate here. And that's where we're talking LeBron projected for 60 fantasy points. How about his 52 fantasy score? Does that intrigue you at all, Greg?
Yes, I think that's a good over. Here's something else that I think is a good over, and shout out to chat for pointing this out. LeBron James tonight, Ross K. I think so Ross K was the first one to mention it. LeBron James, 2.5 threes. Give me the over. Eric was talking about some of the numbers he looked for. The over is juiced at sportsbooks, but if you look at the number for LeBron, it's just 2.5 even number. I have LeBron projected to make over 3 threes today. Mm-hmm. And I think there's going to be a lot of usage going to LeBron. I like the matchup against Houston. I think over 2.5 threes is a pretty strong number, as is LeBron averages 2.8 threes per game. We know his usage has been up as of late. Good number in my opinion.
Love it. I'm here for it. I'm going to probably go with the 52 fantasy points though. I think that's just that's ridiculously low. That's an 8 fantasy point discrepancy between our projections here at Awesemo and that number.
Yep. I think both of those are really strong options.
Great.
Can't go wrong with either of them. I think I do lean towards you though. If I had to pick one, I feel a little bit better about the fantasy points than the threes. Either way though, I think both are plus EV.
I knew we were going to find something with LeBron. That's kind of what I was saying. That's where you got to start the digging. You got to start going through it. And again, that's the nice part about Odd Shoppers. It takes literally 15 seconds to go click LeBron, look at all the lines, compare them to Prize Picks, and you've got a very positive EV bet.
And here's another one that I really like. Sticking on the Lakers, and this is where we can take advantage of news. I talked about liking Carmelo Anthony as a contrarian GPP play. I have him projected for about 19 real life points. His over-under is 13.5 points now over on Prize Picks. I think we're going to see right around 30 minutes from Melo. I think we're going to see a lot of usage because that's what he does when he's not on the court. He shoots 25% usage rate last game. Give me over 13.5 points for Melo. Do you have any pushback to that?
None whatsoever. I just clicked on it. I'm adding it to my card.
Yeah, I think that is another good one. Carmelo Anthony, looking at some of his recent games in terms of usage.
Well, Malik Beasley starting. I think I expected that. I don't think. Maybe I'm just so cluttered down on trying to update Houston stuff, which has taken way too long. Way too long is the right answer, but I wanted it to be right. But yeah, Beasley starting there. That's just a headache. That's a headache.
So with Beasley starting from Minnesota Timberwolves, this is also, we haven't seen him start alongside Russell and Edwards this year, have we?
No, not once.
So, new situation. How do you think that impacts, number one, Beasley himself? But then number two, how does it impact guys like Cat, Edwards, and Russell? Because we were talking about how when Melo's out on the court. He chucks. Well, same could be said for Malik Beasley. This dude definitely likes to chuck. Malik Beasley, 4,800 over on DK. On FanDuel, Malik Beasley is 48. So 4,800 on both FanDuel and DK. Small forward shooting guard on FanDuel, just shooting guard over on DK. Do you find him to be a viable option now that he's starting?
I think more so on FanDuel. DK, I think you can get to a little bit here. I mean, looking at our minutes projection, it looks like they were a little bit ahead of the curve. I don't know who I was expecting to have start, because it was never going to be Noel. It was never going to be McLaughlin alongside of him there. I think by default, it should have been Malik Beasley, but yet I only had him projected for 26 minutes. So I completely missed the boat there on that one. That's really the only candidate. That shouldn't have been a surprise to me. That was just an oversight, but he wasn't projecting out that well at the 30 minutes. I doubt we changed 30 minutes as the projection here at Awesemo for that. I think you can get to him in a couple lineups, but FanDuel would be the spot if you wanted to try to make him. He might slip into a lineup or two for me over there, but Edwards, it doesn't change anything for how egregious his tag is over on FanDuel. Maybe a little less Russell. I wasn't really trying to make Russell too much of a thing over there today as is. You had Reggie Jackson, Russell Westbrook for cheaper, which is so weird to say that like D'Angelo, so Edwards and Cat active is legitimately going to be projected better than Russell Westbrook just alongside LeBron. So what a weird spot it is. But yeah, D'Angelo Russell, I've only got like 2 shares of over on FanDuel. So I'm not going to probably change a whole heck of a lot for this.
I lagged out there for a second. I have no clue what you just said, but because
cool.
I have so much faith and trust in you, Eric. I back everything you said 100%. I don't even know what it is. So hopefully you weren't saying anything like totally
100% go Bear
or whatever.
Is what I said. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It was, yeah. Like I got off and what you said is actually Josh Okogie is the guy to roster from the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'll put my faith in Eric that he give out the right guys there. Super chat here from Corey Bomber. Can you play KJ Martin and Şengün and then Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green? I have no issue with KJ Martin and Şengün in the same lineup. I prefer Kevin Porter Jr. to Jalen Green. How about you?
I prefer Kevin Porter Jr. to Jalen Green as well, but Jalen Green is drastically lower owned. So that's kind of what you're looking at. These are tournaments where we're trying to finish at the top. And KJ Martin, I think, is just a guy that you want to be getting to, period. End of story, just in terms of he's going to have to play a lot of minutes there. And Şengün, that shouldn't be something with as cheap as they are, even if they're going to be on the floor a lot together, I would assume. So definitely have no qualms in firing one up over the other or having them in the same lineup. There shouldn't be any consideration there.
Another super chat from William Fox. Any love for Porzingis tonight?
Yes.
You've love for Porzingis?
I do on FanDuel, 6K, even in a limited sample. And again, this is a RinPack du jour. So you can all head over to Twitter, go to @RinPack, follow my boy, one of the best players on planet Earth. You guys know him. You guys love him. He's really good at this DFS thing. He's like, I'm going to have some interest in Porzingis at 6K. And I was a little floored by it last night. But sure enough, if I put him in for 28 minutes, which is not a stretch, I think 26 is probably 26. You think it's a stretch? You played what, 25 in that first one out, or 21? Never mind. Okay. Yeah. That is a massive stretch. Excuse me. I had him for 26 here. 25 is the number we have here at Awesemo. Dennis Schroeder available to play. Okay. God, this just got annoying. I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen with 4 minutes left. Crap.
So that game locks. That game, you have time. That game doesn't lock for 33 minutes.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah,
but good. I just spent all my time updating with Dennis Schroeder out. So of course he's in. Like,
they waited for you to finish and then they said he was in.
Yeah, that sounds like something else, Craig.
Well, let's go around the league and see just the couple of games that are going on right now. What are some of the fantasy results? Because I see people already starting to tilt in the chat a little bit, which you should. The first quarter of games, especially when we're doing the post lock show, that's where GPPs are decided. But so far, Hornets, no real fantasy upside here from the Hornets. From the Celtics, massive start for Robert Williams, Bob Williams, Time Lord. 4 points, 7 rebounds, an assist, and a steal so far. So big start for him. He's really the only fantasy relevant player in that game so far. Bulls, Pistons. Nothing really doing from the Bulls side of the game. From the Pistons side, here's where people are freaking out. And I want to know, how are you handling this, Eric, on a mental level? Marvin Bagley has not come off the court yet in this game, but his only stat is 1 rebound. No points, no assists, no steals, no blocks. Oh, he does have a turnover. So we're looking at nearly 0 fantasy points in 8 minutes for Marvin Bagley. Should we be panicking?
No, we're fine.
All right.
Look how calm I am today. It's a little eerie, actually. It's a little eerie. It's offsetting for myself, even.
I think it's time to panic on Marvin Bagley. I think we should all be freaking out right now, losing our shit entirely. I think that we should be very uncomfortable. I think everybody in chat is justified to be tilting right now. We should not feel good about this. Here's what we should feel good about, though. One more prize pick. Let's leave the people with one more. If you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're signing up at Prize Picks, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. Let's give the people a winner. One more Prize Picks play. What are we looking at, Eric?
All right, here we go, everybody. The whole enchilada, if you will. How about we're in love with Jokic. I'm not going to short Jokic. Don't do this to yourself, Eric. It's just going back and forth. I'm going back and forth. I think De'Aaron Fox is a guy that we should be a little bit bullish on in terms of props. I think looking at his points prop, actually it's been adjusted up to 25.5. Dude, this is just crazy looking at some of the numbers, how they've changed in the last hour and a half since we started this show. So again, they're going to constantly be changing over here on this site. So that's really a good thing, I would say. I like that, you can kind of take advantage of, and that it's not just, well, it would be better if it was just set all day at one thing and then news were to change and it would still be set at that. But this is just like a sports book where they're moving the numbers here constantly. So it's an ecosystem. You're trying to be early with some of the news here. I'm going through here, going back and forth between Odd Shopper. I'm struggling to find one more. Help me out.
I'm going to go right back to the well with somebody that I've liked recently. Oh, look, somebody already brought this up in the chat. Robbie Pierce mentioned it. DeAndre Ayton over points. Ayton is now, he's been scoring very well for the Phoenix Suns as of late. And he's been hitting the over on his points prop. He had that one weird game against the New York Knicks where he scored 8 points. Other than that, though, his recent games without Chris Paul, we have now seen the over hit on DeAndre Ayton's points props 5 of the last 6 games. He's playing a bigger role in the offense without Chris Paul. I get Booker's coming back. That's going to take a little bit of a hit into his usage, but it's already reflected in his points prop. It's only down to 14.5. That's a really low number. I've been riding DeAndre Ayton lately. I'm going to continue to do it. I don't think he's getting priced appropriately. Over 14.5 points for DeAndre Ayton. How do you feel about that?
I absolutely love that. What a great finishing spot. That's
right.
Perfect.
And that game locks in 10 minutes. So something that you guys can get in right before that game starts. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't done so already, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Marvin Bagley, don't do this to us. Score some points, grab some rebounds, do the good stuff. Guys, good luck tonight. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.